The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show. Before there was a Forbidden Door, there was Starrcade 1995. We're going to be watching it in length for 2 hours and 44 minutes here on this episode of Kickin' Out at 2. Joining me not as always, because usually it's Dennis that's joining me, but the brainchild of this idea as we approach the AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door event. My brother and special contributor to this podcast, Justin Rosenbluth, was the one that came up with this idea. He's joining us today as we're going to sit back and watch this match with all of you on the peacock, if you will. Justin, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Yeah, I guess formerly the offensive coordinator, now a special contributor. So
special counsel, maybe.
Ooh,
I like that. Yeah, a little wise man, maybe.
You're our tribal chief. I'm just a special counsel.
I guess, yeah. I don't know.
On the island of relevancy that is Kicking Out at 2.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was about a year ago, I think you came up with this idea heading into the Forbidden Door, and the schedules didn't permit it, and I'm glad that we didn't cover it then because I couldn't tell you, most of the matches on last year's Forbidden Door, if any of them. And I didn't watch the show, so. But I will say that, at the time of this recording, it's early June. We plan to drop this right around a few days before the actual AEW New Japan Forbidden Door. And there's only 2 matches that have been publicly announced. Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega in a rematch from their Wrestle Kingdom match recently in January. And then probably the one that I wouldn't say I'll go out and buy this pay-per-view, but I'll probably make a concerted effort to see this match through nefarious pirating means. Bryan Danielson and Kazuchika Okada in a singles match. And at the time of this recording, it's been rumored that CM Punk's involvement will be heavy on this show with a match with Kenta Kobashi.
And that's definitely one I think a lot of hardcore fans want to see, just based off of their history and their similarities. But I would definitely agree with you on the match with Bryan and Danielson, I should say. Dragon, let's just call him Dragon.
Yeah.
Dragon and Okada, to me, has definitely got the most sizzle, and it's got the punch to be packed with it. Because Okada's he's a fucking icon in Japan.
Yep.
And to me, and I'm in the minority, but to me, the biggest star in AEW in terms of star power and relevancy is American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, formerly Daniel Bryan, just because of the heights he reached in WWE. And I know CM Punk's the big, the appeal, the draw, and all that, and that's going to maybe usurp this if he faces Kenta. But, to me, Danielson, should be treated more like what it looks like they're about to do with him.
Yeah,
so I'm looking. I don't know if I'll see it, but that's probably the one I'm looking most forward to as of right now.
Yeah, I don't know what else they have cooked up. I would imagine that seeing that MJF is the AEW World Champion, he'll have a part on this show, maybe against someone like a Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Is he the champ over there?
I want to say he is, and I'm not. For all of you, hardcores out there, please don't, lynch us by all means. If you don't listen to the podcast, oh well. But yeah, I don't.
Dennis Conduit isn't here to
Dennis, I know, right?
Although, yeah, it would be helpful to have the Mike Tenay of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
That's right.
Mike Tenay of Kicking Out at 2, I should say.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Women's wrestling and Japanese wrestling.
Yeah, that would be helpful. His schedule, unfortunately, didn't allow him to record with us this time around, but I'm glad you are here with us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to your Peacock. And you can sign. Now, I have the commercial-free Peacock, okay? And from time to time, I'll give you guys a timestamp. We might play the audio for some promos. At some point, probably through the halfway point, I think we're going to take a bathroom break. If any of you need to hit pause on your listening devices, whether it's your smartphone or your tablet or even your computer, if you're listening to this on a computer. But you can go find Starrcade 1995. It's season 13, episode 1 in the WCW section of the WWE Hub over on Peacock. It runs 2 hours, 44 minutes, and 18 seconds. And I'll give you guys a little bit of a countdown. And when I say play, press play. And then you can, if you don't want to watch, you just want to listen to what we have to say, by all means, have at it. But I am definitely looking forward to doing this one with all of you. So without further ado, in 3, 2, 1, hit play. Now, just to provide a little bit of context as we watch this open here, it's a best-of-7 series between WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling in the World Cup of Wrestling, as we see the matchups Benoit and Liger, Otani and Eddie Guerrero, Johnny B. Bad and Masa Saito, Kanemoto and Alex Wright, Lex Luger and Masa Chono, Randy Savage and Hiroshi Tenzan, and Sting and Kensuke Sasaki. An interesting lineup on the WCW side as we get the overhead shot live from the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. This is early Nitro days.
Yes, just a few months after it debuted.
Yes, just a few months after it debuted, which I got a little interesting tidbit during some of my research. As we see Tony Schiavone along with Bobby the Brain Heenan and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, doing the commentary for this show. It had been reported through the Wrestling Observer, whether you want to consider it a report or not, that WCW had been toying around with the idea of taping Nitro live every other week and going with a taped broadcast the following week. Now, given what Nitro had provided...
So the way Raw was doing
the way Raw was... Well, actually, during this time in 95, I think Raw was live once, and they would tape 3 one-hour episodes after...
Oh, okay. So they would do... So Nitro, as you said, was going to do what again?
Nitro would do one live, and then the next night, or maybe even that same night, they would tape for the following week.
Okay.
Because Nitro at this time was only 1 hour. So was Raw. And I know Raw had like Superstars and Action Zone and Wrestling Challenge and all these different tapings. So they used to tape 4 or 5 episodes. But with Nitro, they only had 1 episode. They would go live every week. They were toying with the idea of alternating. Now, given what Nitro had provided for the wrestling world and the wrestling landscape at this time, with all the surprises and things like that, what's your take on them possibly taping Nitro every other week, and what kind of impact would that have had on moments like, let's say, Medusa throwing the women's title in the trash can, or even the debut of The Outsiders, Hall and Nash, in mid-1996?
Well, I think it would have fundamentally changed the Monday Night Wars. Having said that, when you go back to the infamous, spoiler of Mick Foley winning the title that Tony Schiavone, gave the Easter egg on, that migrated viewers to go watch that happen.
Yep.
Not that WWF would have done that to WCW, but if Dave Meltzer reported on a spoiler of a taped Nitro, I think there could have been some potential intrigue for fans to want to try to also tune in with more interest because they knew what already was going to happen. So in the same effect, I think you would have seen something like that. But again, fundamentally, I think that would have changed. Who knows, too? Maybe they would have moved all their surprises to the live Nitros and kept the not live ones as
status quo type of storylines.
Who knows? But again, I think that would have fundamentally changed the Monday Night Wars if they did that.
Yeah. What's interesting about that, too, is that, first of all, this pay-per-view that took place, as we see Jushin Liger making his entrance, Jushin Liger and Chris Benoit opening up this pay-per-view. We'll talk about them in a minute. This pay-per-view took place on a Wednesday, December the 27th, following a taped Nitro on Christmas night, December the 25th. So they had taped the Christmas Nitro the previous week following the live Nitro, which saw Randy Savage and Ric Flair... Randy Savage retaining the World Heavyweight Championship
I remember that
against
match.
Ric Flair on a taped Nitro on Christmas night. Now, it's interesting because, before this pay-per-view, the WWF used to put on, well, even before WWF, Jim Crockett Promotions used to run Starrcades on Thanksgiving night, and WWF used to run Survivor Series on Thanksgiving night, and then migrating to Thanksgiving Eve. We would see the Taboo Tuesdays that would come later. What is your take on midweek pay-per-views, and do you think it's something that could possibly be resurrected in today's landscape?
I think it depends, really. I mean, I think it would be cool to see like a Thanksgiving night Survivor Series, or even like Dynamite on Wednesdays when they have that day before Thanksgiving show. That's always kind of like a cool little. Like,
they make it like a bigger deal.
Yeah,
they try to bring that wrestling Thanksgiving tradition back. I'll give them that.
If I remember correctly, WCW also did like Halloween Havocs during the middle of the week too, didn't they? I feel like this Halloween Havoc. This 95 was like a...
No, those were Sundays.
Weekends?
Yeah, those were Sundays.
I feel like there was like...
WWF used to do Summer Slams on Mondays.
Yeah, and then WrestleMania 2 was on like on a Monday night, wasn't it? I remember you telling me that, I feel like.
I don't remember, I'll be honest with you.
But, so yeah, I think that's kind of a cool thing? Yeah, but I think we're sort of seeing that a little bit in drips and drabs of like the Saudi Arabia shows, like on a Thursday afternoon or something like that. I know we had one on Saturday just recently.
Yeah.
So I think when you do with the international twist and that expansion on the WWE side, and eventually I'm sure on the AEW side, where you might see like based on time zone differences, like the possibility of that opening up more.
Like Money in the Bank in July is going to take place on a Saturday at 3:00 in the afternoon here stateside,
and I think that's super cool because. It's just, I don't know, like Sunday night is just not a good night like for stuff like that. I feel like moving them to Saturdays like they have has been cool, and just, like the time difference. Like if you can do it earlier, the better. Why not? You know what I mean? Like
you're making it destination television in a way by doing it in that time frame.
Yeah. Plus, like you look at like what's the programming that you're going to get on like a weekend. The NFL, I mean, does football all day on a Sunday. College football all day on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Why not have, maybe not necessarily running up against those, but just in general, like if you have the opportunity to do something in the afternoon, why not? You know what I mean? I just, and again, I think it would be a cool little twist, and it makes something a little bit more of an enjoyable event too, more of a gathering, I feel like you could have.
Now, I don't know for certain as we're watching this, but I'm just gathering based on logistics and scheduling that their reason behind putting a pay-per-view on a Wednesday evening like this was because of the holiday weekend itself. Christmas falling on a Monday, they tape their Nitro the previous week, and then the following Nitro will be on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
So I would guess that them scheduling this on a Wednesday is no different in a sense than when they used to schedule those Clash of the Champion events on a Wednesday or a Thursday or even a Tuesday during this time period in WCW.
Yeah, I think it's just that probably this one is just the way the calendar fell in terms of like you said, like Christmas and New Year's happening on a Monday, Sunday type thing where it's just like, you know what, like it's just not feasible or maybe the smartest approach to try to sell tickets on a holiday like that. And so let's just get out in the middle of the week.
If you think about it, too, like you said, holiday, okay? It didn't matter what day of the week you put the show on. December has traditionally in wrestling history been known for being a down period in terms of like major pay-per-view events. Unless you built some massive main event or a massive card for December, December pay-per-views were not traditionally very well received because wrestling, majority of it at this time in 95, catering to young kids, even though WCW was trying to go a little bit more older on the demographic side. The parents have already shelled out hundreds of dollars for their kids for Christmas. Yeah. Now you expect them to shell out another $50-$60 for a pay-per-view? It's kind of a tall task in that sense.
Well, I think there was that element of that back then, but now when you're talking about things that are streaming, and you're already that's already baked into your budget. Yeah, you can still get away with it. However,
I think in a streaming world it's different. This is traditional pay-per-view.
But in the streaming world, we still see that type of lull, if you will, where it's very TV based, and they're just trying to especially in the WWE, they're just trying to get to the Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
there's Survivor Series, and then from then to the Royal Rumble, that's a solid 8 weeks where they're
building up their TV programs.
But there's also just crap weeks where they do a Slammy Awards or they do a best of or stuff like that where it's an arduous road to the Royal Rumble because they're also competing with college football national championship and
Yep.
NFL playoffs and things like that. But yeah, I do like that gap though. Like, did they have a pay-per-view in December?
WWE, they haven't had one in a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think since the Thunderdome era. I think the last one they did was like the Randy Orton Bray Wyatt match where they had to set one of them on fire.
I thought that was like a Fastlane or something.
Maybe that was
right
TLC.
Before WrestleMania.
I think that was TLC because that's what set Wyatt out for a few months, and then he came back at a Fastlane.
Oh, you're right. Orton was wrestling Alexa Bliss.
Yeah,
I think it was.
And then that set up Wyatt's return.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I think I like that there is no pay-per-views because like sometimes you just don't need it, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with just having with trying to like solidify some good episodes of TV, like in this instance, having a world title match on free TV, things like that. Like there's nothing wrong with doing that. Making those episodes more important. I think last year, the last episode of SmackDown was a John Cena episode.
John Cena returned, yeah.
And why not? Like, we got to make those shows important too.
Yeah.
So I think there is there's a good strategic reasoning behind it that definitely makes sense and is welcomed.
I think also to kind of button up this subject when it comes to during this time period in WCW, I try to look at it from like when we were kids. So we're both home from school on school vacation in between Christmas and New Year's. We might have gotten some money from our grandparents or our uncles or whatever, our aunts and uncles, or even our own parents.
Right.
A little spending money. I wouldn't be surprised if WCW was also trying to tap into that audience that is at home during the week of in between Christmas and New Year's to gain some pay-per-view buy rates.
Yeah.
During this time period where a young Dave Rosenbluth and a young Justin Rosenbluth beg mom and dad, hey, can we get Starrcade? And
you don't have to go to bed and wake up early. The next
yeah, exactly.
School,
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's some of that too. And
so you're kind of banking on that type of purchase. Like I wouldn't say a last minute purchase, but like a on the whim type of purchase.
Especially for Starrcade too, because Starrcade was like their WrestleMania. And it was a big deal, even up until this point. Like Starrcade, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this further, but there was like an element of Starrcade every year where like it was thematically different. This being one of the years where it was like the World Cup of Wrestling. One year it was the Battle Bowl. One year it was
they did battle. They put Battle Bowl on it.
The $1 Million Challenge, I think, was one of the earlier ones when it was with it was Flair versus Dusty, and who was the ref?
Joe Louis?
No, not Joe Louis. Joe Frazier.
Joe Frazier.
Joe Louis was long gone by then, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everything had
the Night of the Skywalkers in '86.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So and they did that on purpose, and this is another iteration of that. But still, it was a big effing deal.
Yeah.
Like, going all the way, 2 years later, to me, like one of the most hyped up matches ever, Sting versus Hogan. That's like the best job WCW, a non-WWE company, ever did hyping a match.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
We can go all.
We can talk about the finish all day, but
that's not
the build up towards that show was probably the best they'd ever done.
And it was important because it was at Starrcade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was lineage and tradition to it. Starrcade was Starrcade was up until then was like probably that year too, because after that it kind of started to taper off. Was a big deal. It was one of the biggest shows of the year.
I will say it dipped in '94, and I actually want to talk about the pay-per-view numbers itself because I got some notes here.
Okay, cool.
So this is like we talked about at the beginning. This was the early iteration. Nice brainbuster by Liger on Benoit. The early iteration of the Nitro era.
Well, now we know.
And Bischoff.
That explains a lot, doesn't it?
Actually, if you've ever seen the clip, or you ever seen the clip when Too Cold Scorpio does that somersault leg drop onto Benoit, but he lands his ass lands on Benoit's face.
Yeah,
that was the moment, right? You have to YouTube
I was
that
going to say,
shit.
there is a.
That was the
I think
moment
I've seen
right
that. I was going to say there is a meme out there. We're going to go off the rails for a half second before we jump back on. Is a picture of Magic Johnson with surrounded on a beach, surrounded by let's just say double digits amounts of women, and the caption is this had to be the day. And when I see that brainbuster or that Too Cold Scorpio spot,
that had to be the day.
One of those had to be the day.
Oh, man, that's great. So this is the early, Nitro era. Bischoff is experimenting with a lot of different things, making this a variety show of sorts. WCW, at the very least, making it a variety show. As we see Kevin Sullivan embroiled in a rivalry with Chris Benoit, making his presence known in that match. Yeah. Father! With his thick Boston accent.
The Winter Hill Gang over
Have you ever seen
Sullivan.
You ever seen that Broken Skull episode with Nash?
Yes, he does a good Kevin Sullivan.
Kevin Sullivan. Brother, did you hear that? That was the iceberg. It's called WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But anyways, so Bischoff during this era, as we see, New Japan just got the victory, Liger over Benoit. A little help from the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan. They've been turning Nitro into a variety show. You had a mixture of top stars like Hogan and Flair and Sting and Randy Savage. And then you had, a pretty good mid-card with, guys like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, eventually Chris Jericho. They would introduce cruiserweights at some point, Tag team wrestling was pretty solid this time with the Steiners and Harlem Heat and the Nasty Boys and things like that. I'm not saying WCW was setting the world on fire because this was also the same period where they had the fucking Dungeon of Doom. But Bischoff was making a concerted effort to do things completely opposite. And this concept itself was completely opposite as to what the WWF was presenting.
Absolutely.
Now, in the year that... I'm trying to correlate this to Hulk Hogan's involvement. Even though Hogan's not on the show. Hogan, before coming to WCW... their pay-per-view buy rates were nothing to write home about.
It was Dominic's father.
Yeah. Eddie Guerrero. A pre-Latino heat, if you will. But in the year that Hogan had been with the company, WCW's buy rates had gone up 100,000 more each show.
That makes sense.
Now,
that's like a whole AEW pay-per-view, just for context, folks.
Yeah, so... let's just put this into context. WCW Bash at the Beach, July 17th, 1994, did a 1.02 buy rate, coming out to 304,458 pay-per-view buys. The most that entire year. Okay?
Okay.
Hogan's involvement in Halloween Havoc 1994 with Ric Flair in the cage, the retirement match, 297,335 pay-per-view buy rates. This, now to kind of correlate it back. Starrcade, 1994. Hogan and the Butcher, Brutus Beefcake, did 187,135 buys. That's where kind of Starrcade dipped a little in terms of the theme because it was just standard regular matches. The year prior, in 93, Flair putting his career on the line against Vader. Like you said, the Battle Bulls were a theme for a couple years. The Skywalkers. They even did like the $1 Million Challenge. What was it 1980? 1990, they did like a world tag team tournament with tag teams from
Lethal Lottery or whatever.
Yeah.
They did a whole bunch of stuff. They tried stuff, and that like that. And I know I said a few minutes ago that like Starrcade was like the WrestleMania of WCW, but I think to the point you're about to make, when you kind of put those numbers next to like Starrcade and Halloween Havoc, from the time Hogan got there, Halloween Havoc definitely seemed like a bigger show. On a year-to-year basis.
In some degree, yes.
And even to me, like you said, it just, I don't know, it just had more sizzle to it.
Yeah.
Just like Slim Jim's Halloween Havoc, Snickers, Las Vegas, it had a much more panache to it than Starrcade. Starrcade was more of like your, I don't know, end-of-the-year...
celebration.
Yeah. But yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
Now, Hogan's not on this show.
For
television reasons, he was suspended.
Because these are wrestlers.
Yeah.
These are wrestlers. I don't know how well he
you know what, though? To Hogan's credit, if you watch some of his old Japan stuff...
yeah, he threw a dropkick.
He fucking... I watched a match with him and Inoki once in Japan, and he went hold for hold with Inoki. And then
of course.
In 93, he wrestled Muda during the end of his run in the WWF, and they had a fantastic match.
Yeah.
So Starrcade 94 did 187,000 buy rates, okay? Now you go to Starrcade 1995, this episode that we're watching. 113,314 buys.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, compare that. Hogan and Beefcake on top to this World Cup concept. Yeah. And more people wanted to see Hogan and Beefcake. at that time.
Naturally.
Which is crazy to me.
Well, I think you're looking at casual fans really making up that difference, whereas casual fans don't give a fuck about who Saito is or...
That's where I was getting at, too.
Yeah, I think that's a shame, but it is what it is. Like, don't ignore that either, you know what I mean? I like shows like this when they're used properly, and I don't know if there's really ever been a concept, even Forbidden Door, that's really done it as well as it gets done here, where it's like a standalone show. It's like it exists in its own silo, if you will, where it's like...
It kind of puts like some of the existing storylines and arcs on pause.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of integration, but like you don't have to like... There's not a lot of catching up you have to do to watch this show. Yeah. Like if I brought someone over to watch this live and I don't have to sit there and go, well, Alex Wright is this guy champion and this is what he's doing and this is what he's fighting. Yeah. It's just a straight up like showcase.
Yeah.
And that's what I like... When you can do those every once in a while, like that kind of like, I think allows things, like you said, to breathe, and you can put things on hold, and it's not crucial.
Yeah.
It's just a showcase.
You can integrate some of what's going on.
Yeah, like with Kevin Sullivan there.
Yeah, a little bit, but you know, don't water down the concept. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like you said, because otherwise it takes it away from being a standalone show.
Exactly.
So this Starrcade was the lowest bought pay-per-view in 1995 for WCW. Now, let me bring to you some of the business WCW did in 1995 on pay-per-view. Okay? Super Brawl 5, headlined by Hogan and Vader for the first time, which, as a kid, was a very intriguing matchup for me because Hogan was the hero and Vader was the top dog in WCW. He had just mulled through everybody.
It was like Brock Lesnar before Brock
Exactly.
Lesnar. Yeah.
Okay? That show did 298,861 pay-per-view buy rates. Okay?
That's not bad.
The following month, uncensored, headlined by Hogan and Vader in a strap match, where the entire card was showcased as, you know, all different types of gimmick matches. Okay?
Yeah, I was thinking Extreme Rules before Extreme
Exactly.
Rules.
That show did 302,023 buys.
Wait, was this? This is 95, right?
Yeah.
Which one's the one where it was like Macho and Hogan versus like the whole fucking...
That was 96.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 96,
I thought that was 95 for some reason.
Now, Slamboree 1995, headlined by Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage against Ric Flair and Vader in a tag team match, did 179,346 buys.
Now, if I remember that pay-per-view, because I feel like I'll do some of these little, like, month-to-month, like, you know, marathons of shows. Like, I remember watching all the Starrcades during December, because I just felt like doing it. I did that with Slamboree.
Probably during COVID, right?
Yeah, I think I did it with Slamboree, too, and I was watching that 95 one, which was, like, a terrible show. But if I remember correctly, didn't they do a Legends match on that show where it was in black and white?
They've done those. I don't remember if they did it on that show itself.
It was like fucking Wahoo McDaniel against like somebody, like, I don't know.
They probably did.
Dick Murdoch.
They probably did on that show.
They filtered the screen to be black and white.
They did that on I know that they did that on the previous Slamboree events. They did like Tully Blanchard and somebody else.
Then they also did, I remember specific to the Hogan match that on that Slamboree, like either before the match or after the match was like the first Easter egg / appearance of the Giant. They like you could see like a shadowy figure.
Yeah, so it was during like, Hogan's entrance.
Yeah,
and him and Savage came out, and you see in the back like who's that guy in the back? Like
which that was actually kind of cool.
That was the first. That was the first introduction to the Giant, who would eventually be known as the Big Show in later years. That show did, like I said, 179,000. The following month, they brought the Great American Bash back. It took a hiatus for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And they brought it back, and it was headlined by Randy Savage and Ric Flair.
Savage's dad was at ringside, right?
Yeah,
yep.
Which stemmed from the post-match. It stemmed from the post-match angle at Slamboree when Flair and Anderson beat up Angelo Poffo.
Yep.
160,476 pay-per-view buys.
So what was the Slamboree again?
Hogan and Savage against Flair and Vader.
What was the buy rate?
That did 179,346
All right, so you kind of went even,
buys.
more or less, month to month. If you're looking at like that angle carrying over, so you went like
big jump the following month, and I could see why. Bash at the Beach 1995 from Huntington Beach, California, live on the beach.
I always love that Baywatch episode.
Yes. That show, headlined by Hogan and Vader inside of a steel cage for the World Heavyweight title, did 258,035 buys.
There was also on
Savage and Flair in the lifeguard match, which was a lumberjack match.
I think there was, I'm trying to remember, because I've seen the show, because it's always fun to watch it, because it's like outdoors.
Yeah, I love that show.
There was, was it DDP versus
Dave Sullivan.
Dave Sullivan, yep. Or not DDP, Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah.
Sting fought, was it Kensuke Sasaki?
Haku Meng.
He fought Meng, you're right. Yeah,
he had defeated Meng the month prior
yeah,
for the U.S. title in the tournament.
That's all I really remember from that.
Harlem Heat, the Nasty Boys, and Steven Regal and Sir Lord or Earl
Robert
of
Eaton.
Yep. Earl of Eaton.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That was on that show as well.
Okay.
Renegade, I think, and Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff wrestled on that show as well.
That. Yep.
I think Arn Anderson might have been in a match. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was involved in the lifeguard match, which was the lumberjack match. But that's always a fun show, like you said.
250.
258,000 by 258,035 buys, headlined by Hogan. Then it takes a little bit of a dip. Fall Brawl 95, headlined by the War Games match with Hogan, Savage, and Luger and Sting against the Dungeon of Doom. Did 151,061 buys.
Which is, like, unfortunate because, like, that's, like, a fucking all-star lineup in a cool match concept. But whatever.
Yeah. I mean, well, it was Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah.
And
I remember as a fan thinking, real quick before you keep going, like, going back to Kevin Sullivan, like, Hulk Hogan spent years, even to my young self, just slaying fucking monsters.
Dragons,
and you're going to tell me this little fucking midget is a threat to Hulk Hogan, which is perfectly segues to bringing in the Giant.
Yeah.
But, like, you're going to stop Hulk Hogan?
Yeah.
All these people couldn't do it? You're going to stop him? Like, okay, pal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
In hindsight, if you look back on it, like, if they just presented it with, like, Sullivan as, like, Sullivan is, like, the mouthpiece to the Giant instead of that whole Dungeon of Doom thing, I think the spin that they tried to do as portraying him as Andre's son. Remember when they did that? I think that might have gotten over a little bit better than Andre's son and the Dungeon of Doom.
Yeah, I remember that Halloween Havoc. Well, you're probably about to drop those numbers. I can.
188,837
I remember
buys.
that being a huge Halloween Havoc.
Cobo
with the
Hall.
fucking monster trucks and everything, and then Andre, the Giant falls off the roof, and then they like go back to the broadcast table.
I was at Dean's house for that.
Bobby Heenan was like, "Oh my god, I knew his dad. This is so terrible." Like they really
they tried to sell you on it.
They tried hard to make you believe in that little. And I remember like all the little nuggets they put in. You probably were the one that told me like, "Yeah, like it's Andre's son. He's coming back to like go after Hogan." And
yeah.
And then you see him, and you're like, "Oh my god, he's got the one strap singlet.
He's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, and of course he's Andre's son. Like, yeah,
there's nobody else like him out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, even then you like, but he's like younger, and he can like jump off the top rope, and like you're like, then you were like, okay, this guy's gonna.
I think in theory it wasn't a bad idea. The execution was poor. People shit all over it, like they tried to turn him into Andre's son. Like, what? I don't get what. Maybe it's just because I'm the Hogan mark in me, but I don't see what would have been wrong with that story. That he was trying to get. Why he was trying to, get revenge for his father.
Yeah, no, of course. I don't. But it also as much as we talked about how much they tried to play it up in certain scenarios, like with Heenan being overwhelmed because the Giant fell off the roof and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not like when he got introduced in the ring, Dave Penzer was like, "Here's Andre the Giant's son."
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't said like every 2 seconds either.
No.
It was just.
They implied it in important moments when it was necessary.
Yeah. It wasn't
nice
a huge
German
thing.
suplex.
Yeah.
Well, before I continue here with the buy rates, what was your take on Alex Wright?
I liked him.
Yeah?
Yeah, I liked him. Definitely. He was another guy, like everyone talks about the luchadors in WCW, right? Like being such a, like he being, the German wrestler from, the guy from Germany. That was just another worldly person in the company that was there. Because again, in WWE, like you were the fucking garbage man.
Yeah.
You were the goon.
Yeah.
You were
hog farmer. Yeah.
Yeah. That was their variety, like your occupation. The variety here is like, here's this wrestler from Germany, from Tijuana, from Japan wherever, from Canada, like. They were all wrestlers, but they were just from different parts of the world. Yeah. So, like, that part I liked about WCW. And sort of sidebar here to that. And I think we're past this now, WWE on the WWE side. I remember going to WrestleMania 24. We've talked about before, like, we met in Florida. Like, I came from New York. Like, we met at our grandparents' house. And I remember Nana specifically asking us, like, oh, so this is, like, a big show. Or, like, do wrestlers from all over the world wrestle on this show? And in my mind, I was like, yeah, Yeah, but not really. Like, it's
yeah.
all the same wrestlers.
Yep.
Like,
See them every week.
But like at that time, those wrestlers on that roster in 2008 weren't, for the most part, distinguishable by their characters in terms of origin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas now they are a little bit more. There is a more worldly element,
geographic
to
element to it.
You know what I mean? So like, I don't know why I just thought of that, other than the fact that like WWE wasn't big on that. Like, this guy from this country, unless it was like an evil anti-American character.
Yeah.
But now they really do kind of highlight a wrestler from where they're from, more so than I'd say in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They do highlight wrestlers and make their country of origin a part of who they are. The reason why I said this is because this was happening here in 1995 in WCW, and that I liked.
Yeah,
definitely.
that was the appeal for me as a younger fan, even before this time period of watching WCW. Like, I remember thinking I was pretty fucking cool that I was the only one who knew the Great Muta.
Right.
Because I had watched him on WCW wrestle Sting and Ric Flair, names like that. So, like, WCW, I think that was a big appeal. A part of the appeal for me as a fan of WCW was the international flavor and how they presented them being from their countries and not being, like you said, a fucking garbage man or, a hog farmer or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though I still liked some of what WWF was doing, there was that international... professional sports Olympic type of...
In WCW, you mean?
Yes, appeal
definitely.
Of some of their wrestlers. And obviously with this World Cup concept coming to life on this episode.
Yeah, just the individuality of the wrestlers in WCW was approached differently. Like you said, the Olympic element, like even on a weekly basis, the luchadors and Alex Wright and these guys from Japan, like that was part of their individuality. And there's a victory there. Was that 2-0 now?
Yeah, Japan's up 2-0.
But whereas in WWE, for a long time, up until, like I said, maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, their individuality came in the character they were portraying. Because the age-old, like, Chief Jay Strongbro is not a Native American. He's an Italian. Yeah. You know what I mean? Same thing with what's his name?
Muhammad Hassan.
Ivan Putski.
Not Polish. Putski's from Texas.
Yeah, he's not Polish. Like, you portrayed something that was, maybe of a nationality, but it wasn't necessarily authentic or true.
And you know what's interesting?
And it wasn't interesting.
You know what's interesting about that, as you say that? Vince McMahon Sr., when he laid his eyes on Hulk Hogan...
Oh, yeah, the Irishman, right?
The Irishman. He had thoughts of, like, this Irish wrestler.
Yep.
Because... he made so much money with Bruno Sammartino as this Italian icon that bridged the gap between Italian Americans. That when he saw Hulk Hogan, he thought of this, like, especially in the New York tri-state area where there's a big Irish population. Absolutely. He saw Hogan as, like, his Irish representative.
Yeah.
In many ways.
It's funny how that, like, that philosophy of labeling characters was abandoned very much when Hulk Hogan came back to the WWF and the boom happened.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't about where you were from, it was what you did and how you looked and those types of things. Which who's going to argue with the success of that, really? But it was just, to your point, I like this. This is a variety that was new and fresh, and in some ways still is.
Yeah, it was a very underrated show for its time. It was actually, in many ways, you could say, ahead of its time.
Yeah.
The concept itself with the World Cup and the Best of 7 series. Let me finish off here with some of these numbers. The month prior to this show, World War III, which was the debut of the 3-ring 60-man Battle Royal.
Yep.
Headlined by Randy Savage, winning the vacant WCW title. That show did 135,340 pay-per-view buy rates. Now,
such a throwaway pay-per-view. I feel like I felt like what, like it was like
WCW's version of the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, like, you got one ring with 30 wrestlers, we have 3 rings with 60. Like, look at us. Like,
I will say,
top that.
As a kid, I never watched any of those shows live, but I always thought the appeal with the 3 rings, I was like, that's kind of cool looking. Right. And then a couple of years ago, on this show, Dennis and I did a watch-along of that pay-per-view match, just the World War III Battle Royal. And you'll have to go back and listen to it. Maybe you can watch it That's my dryer buzzer going off. Don't worry. I'm not in trouble. Going back and watching that match and trying to do a watch-along podcast of that was very confusing.
Yeah, it's not even a match. Like, it's just people talking, and then, like, if they have the time to, like, oh, someone got thrown out, or, oh, look at what this guy's doing. Like, it was like the Royal Rumble if you fast-forwarded the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, pretty much.
Watched it on fast-forward.
Pretty much.
Like, that's what it was. And it was, but again, all the guys were in the ring at the same time. You know what I mean? Which is also, like, ugh. It just wasn't a match. It was a great let-me-up match. Or, excuse me, it was a let-me-up match that wasn't intended to be a let-me-up match.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to talk to you about, there might be some out there, some of the hardcore diehards that listen to this podcast that will say, you know, because we said at the top of this program, this is the this show really is the precursor to what AEW and New Japan have presented within the last year with their Forbidden Door. Like I said, this is the OG Forbidden Door. If you will. But some may argue that the old Super Clash events would be considered Forbidden Door-esque. Sure. But there's a difference here. With those Super Clash events, those were a bunch of promoters that got together and they put the best of their each promotion and those matches on the events. There was never any inter-promotional matches, if you will.
Right.
With the exception of the final one being Jerry Lawler, Kerry Von Erich to unify the World Class and AWA World Heavyweight Championship, where they did the whole Dusty finish with the blood, Kerry bleeding, and Lawler never gave up, and all this other stuff. But some interesting matches here.
But yeah, I don't think I would say that, like, to kind of pose that idea. I wouldn't consider this a Forbidden Door concept. I think that was just kind of like, if you think about it, Starrcade, the original Starrcade, was that concept first.
Yeah,
because Jim Crockett Promotions, while they were the ones that promoted the card, they didn't. All those talents on that show were not working in Jim Crockett Promotions.
That is a good point.
That was a very much here's the best of the NWA.
Yeah,
not just Jim. Well, Jim Crockett was
Georgia and
like St. Louis and all of that. Like that was people. That's a nugget that people don't really remember, is that Starrcade '83 was very much that was Super Clash before Super Clash.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? It was the best of the brands.
Have you ever heard the story about how Harley? I'm sure you have, about how Harley Race almost didn't make it to that Starrcade.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Where he was in a bathroom of a hotel in Stamford with Vince McMahon, and Vince wanted him to show up on WWF TV with the NWA title, and Harley turned him down. And coincidentally, during that time period, Harley was having some issues with Bob Geigel and the NWA over the positioning of Harley's territory within the NWA.
Well, I believe he and Geigel were partners. And Geigel, from what at least Ric Flair will say and some others, Geigel was not the most likable, reliable.
He was shrewd.
He was much like a lot of the other old guys. He was cheap, and well, Vince McMahon will tell you about a lot of these promoters, which I believe to be true, is that these guys didn't invest in their businesses. They were crooks, and they made money, and they pocketed change for themselves, and then they would shortchange wrestlers and string them along. They were carnies. Whereas Vince McMahon, up until probably today, he makes his money and he pours it right back into his business. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, like definitely like Harley Race, who that was I think that was kind of the way that wrestlers like would elevate their careers. Like they would work in a territory, then they would travel around, but then maybe come back to a territory and then buy into a territory.
Yeah,
like Gorilla Monsoon, I believe, bought into Puerto Rico.
Yeah, he had a piece of that.
Yeah, like wrestlers, like when their careers were slowing down, it became like a method of passive income.
He also had a piece of
the WWF.
The WWF,
and I've heard he made stupid money off of shows in the Boom because of his piece in the Vince McMahon transaction from his father.
I heard that Vince Jr.
took care of him.
Pretty much, he had a job for life and took care of him up until the day he died.
Earned a percentage of every show that took place, and that was when they were running like 3 shows a night.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
A, B, and C towns.
Yeah, and he was getting a share of all those live gates. But I think, like back then, like that was your thing. Like when you reached a certain level, like a Harley Race was in the early '80s, where you were essentially the best in the world.
Yeah.
Up until, before passing that torch. Like, the next stage of your career, as you started to probably slow down, was, again, to buy into a territory, do some business, and, again, just kind of really, I don't know, downsize, maybe not travel as much. So, yeah, he probably, I could see him probably having some sort of disagreement there with Geigel.
Yeah, the big story was he had the meeting with Vince, and by the time the meeting happened, word had gotten around in the locker room because there's no cell phones. It's all it's 1983. So it's all telephone, telegram, telewrestler. By the time the meeting had taken place, Harley, the locker room had found out that Vince and Harley had met.
Yeah,
and so there was an awful snowstorm in the Carolinas. And Harley, on most of the East Coast, into the Carolinas, Harley drove through the snowstorm from Connecticut all the way to Greensboro, shows up in the middle of the second or third match, and everybody's thinking like, holy shit, what's he doing here? He just met with Vince. And then Harley kicks everybody out of the locker room and tells Dusty, Flair, and Jim Crockett, everyone out, I want, a minute with you guys. And he pretty much looked at Flair and said, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And then that was how he passed the torch. But had he taken that offer up on Vince McMahon, the main event of Starrcade 83 might not have ever happened. We might not be having this conversation about Starrcades in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think another part of that too, in terms of if I'm to understand correctly, like Vince McMahon was making passes at all these promoters to buy them out.
Yep.
And to go into business with them so that in his expansion. Maybe that was what he was trying to do with Harley. I don't know. He may have not necessarily been interested in Harley Race as a top tier ticket performer.
Yeah.
He may have been more interested in the land that Harley ran.
Yep.
More than anything. And through that, Harley could be the conduit for Vince McMahon. He could open the door for Vince in Kansas City.
Yep.
And that's probably what that was.
And you've heard that story about Harley pulling a gun out on Hogan, right?
Yes, I've heard. Yeah, the Harley Race is one person I wish I did get to be within in the same room with
arm's length. Yeah,
yeah, but he is one person that, like, to me, like, he's like I wish I could have ever sat down and like had a meaningful conversation. Not that I would ever have the chance to.
Yeah,
but like that's like a wrestler's wrestler. Like,
my favorite.
He's like the door. He is the door. He is the forbidden door from, pun intended, from the boom to the territories. He is the gatekeeper of that.
Yeah.
That time frame.
Him passing the torch to Flair at Starrcade 83 is the equivalent of Andre doing it for Hogan at WrestleMania 3, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely.
Because of the impact that eventually Starrcade and Flair would have on those future Starrcade events. Because Flair headlined Starrcade 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. He 5 or 6 Starrcades in a row following.
He didn't do 90?
90, he did do 90. That's right. He was the Black Scorpion.
It counts.
But my favorite Harley Race story was at Starrcade 93 when Flair was wrestling Vader, and Vader had a tendency to, if he was working with a guy he had never worked before, he used to like to test guys.
Right.
And Vader used to have the spot in the corner where he'd fucking take the gloves off and he'd fucking pepper the guy up in the chest and the body shots in the head.
Yeah.
And Harley's sitting in the corner and he knows what Vader's doing. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, Leon, lay off, Leon. And he's just fucking boom, 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 boom. So if you go back, and I heard this story once on Shivani's podcast on what happened when, but so the referee does the break, right? Mm-hmm. He breaks at 4, right? And he's scolding Vader. And Flair's, taking a rest in the corner. And you see in the corner of the screen, Harley Race is kind of conversing with Flair. And to Tony Schiavone's credit, on commentary, he says, Harley Race is taunting Ric Flair after he just got the beating of his life from Ric Flair. Right. But what Harley Race told him was, if you don't start fighting back with Leon when we get to the dressing room, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you.
I believe it.
And so Flair takes... So then Vader comes back, and Flair makes the big comeback, and he gets a couple of live rounds in on Vader, and Vader backed off. And
Yeah.
Flair told that story once on his podcast,
Yeah.
and I think I read it in his book too.
Yeah.
Harley pretty much threatened his life.
Harley Race, and it, to me, still is probably one of the toughest men in wrestling. Like, I probably, like, as a fan, again, never having seen the man wrestle live or in person or on a, like, his career was over by the time I was ever a thought. That guy, to me, is an OG of all different types in terms of what wrestling means. 8-time world's champion, when being the world's champion was the biggest deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Luger here, going for the rack. It looks like we got a victory. WCW on the board. We've been talking through a fair amount of these matches here. But this is Lex Luger's victory for WCW. They're only down one match. It's 2-1. I'll be honest with you, not a fan of the pairing with Jimmy Hart. I was not a fan. I didn't really care for Jimmy Hart and Lex Luger as a pairing.
Jimmy Hart, by this stage of his career, was just there.
Yeah.
He was there with Hogan. He was there with the Dungeon of Doom. Go out and be Jimmy Hart was his job. That, on top of getting Hogan his fucking Chinese food and doing his dry cleaning and make his real job from what I understand was not just to
he was Hogan's business manager.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a favor to Hogan, but he also did produce a lot of the music.
Yep.
He was their Jim Johnson.
Yeah.
For during this time frame. But again, like he wasn't an appealing character that mattered to anybody at this point.
I've never been a fan of the Jimmy Hart Hulk Hogan babyface presentation. I didn't think that Hogan. I didn't feel like as a babyface, Hulk Hogan needed Jimmy Hart, and I correlated Jimmy Hart as being this little fucking weasel that Hogan used to toss around when he wrestled Earthquake.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you put the two of them together, and you're just like, whatever. But anyways, I wasn't really a big fan of the Luger.
It didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And, like I said, Jimmy Hart was, he had a role. He served his purpose, but he wasn't it wasn't like, oh my God, Luger's with Jimmy Hart. Or like in the same vein that we'd be thinking about that with Bobby Heenan or Paul Heyman today.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's got this guy, toting him around. Like, no, he's just there.
So I wanted to read you some of the results of the very first Super Clash, because we talked about it, as kind of like you said, Jim Crockett really and Starrcade was like Super Clash before the Super Clash. So the very first Super Clash took place on September 28th, 1985 from Comiskey Park.
Yep.
20,347 were in attendance.
That's a good number.
It was co-promoted by the National Wrestling Alliance, the AWA, and World Class Championship Wrestling. Vern Gagne, Jim Crockett, both had stated that the live gate they made roughly over $200,000.
I'm sure.
Which sounds like a decent number for 1985.
Oh, it definitely is a good number. I'm just wondering if that's true or not.
Yeah,
but I can see that 20,000.
I know that from doing some of my research that there was issues with the live gate and the numbers over it, and eventually it led to some of Crockett's wrestlers getting pulled from being on AWA programming.
Yeah. I mean, it was 20,000 is a good number to draw at an arena today. Yeah. So to have that done, even though it was
in a baseball stadium in 1985 is nothing to sneeze at.
It's nothing bad. Yeah. I mean, for a wrestling show, it's 35 years ago or today. It's a good number to draw unless it's at WrestleMania.
So on this card, the opening match saw Steve Regal take on Brad Reagans, defeating him for the AWA World Light Heavyweight Championship.
That's a cool hidden nugget. Nice.
Sherry Martel defeating Candy Devine for the AWA World Women's Championship.
Okay.
Mil Mascaras defeating Buddy Roberts for the IWA World Heavyweight Championship.
Okay.
Greg Gagne, Scott Hall, and Kurt Hennig defeating Ray Stevens, Nick Bockwinkel, and Larry Zabisco in a six-man tag.
Ooh, that's like a fucking murderer's row of Hall of Famers.
Yeah. Little Tokyo. Well, except for Greg Gagne. He no Hall of Famer. Sorry.
That's fine.
Kimberly coming out with Johnny B. Bad. A hidden gem in WCW, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like Johnny B. Bad.
Johnny B. Bad was the kind of guy that you put out there to in the opening matches. He was I wouldn't say he was a utility player, but you could put him in any situation and he got a good reaction from the audience.
He was a solid wrestler who had brought an energy to a part of the show at any point you wanted to put him there. It was his energy that he brought.
Yeah, exactly. Even some of his in-ring work was pretty
Yeah, he wasn't a bad wrestler at all. I wouldn't say he was a bad wrestler.
The NWA World Midget Championship. Little Tokyo defeating Little T. Jumbo Saruta, Giant Baba, and Tenru defeating Harley Race, Bill Irwin, and Scott Irwin for the Asian Six-Man Tag Team Championship. I didn't know that was a thing.
Okay. So they were like, all right, Harley, you got to get these two guys over. And
yeah.
He's like, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
Because that Asian team is actually a pretty star-studded lineup.
For Japanese wrestling standards, yes.
Yeah.
That's a Murderers Row Hall of Fame right there for Japanese wrestling. Kerry Von Erich pinned Jimmy Garvin for the World Class Championship Wrestling Texas Championship. And then we had the Russian team of Khrushchev Khrushchev, Ivan Koloff, and Nikita Koloff defeating the Crusher, Dick the Bruiser, and Baron Von Raschke for the NWA World Six-Man Tag Team titles.
Sounds about right.
Jerry Blackwell defeated Kamala in a $10,000 body slam match.
Okay.
The Road Warriors defeated the Fabulous Freebirds.
Is that where they painted their face stars and bars?
For the AWA World Tag Team Championship. Sergeant Slaughter defeating Boris Zukov for the AWA Americas Championship.
Rock and Roll who?
No, that's Buck Zumhoff.
That's Buck Zumhoff. Piece of trash, Buck Zumhoff.
Yeah, that fucking child molester. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised that this match. Actually, I'm kind of surprised that this match didn't main event. But Ric Flair defeated Magnum TA for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And in the main event for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship, Rick Martel fought Stan Hansen to a double disqualification.
You could see why.
You could see why there were some issues there.
Well, you could see why that didn't work out. Because how do you not main event Ric Flair versus Magnum TA?
Well,
on the show that is to oppose WWE. This is the best of everybody else, and we're going to go after you, Vince. And
we're going to put Rick Martel and Stan Hansen.
Yeah,
that's
all you need to know.
And the funny thing is that Flair and Magnum went 19 minutes and 10 seconds. Martel and Hansen fought to a double DQ in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah, so that had to have been
some shit was going down.
Yeah, there was some carny.
That's so stupid.
Some carny shit going down. So that was the first AWA Super Clash. The second AWA Super Clash took place at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, California, with an attendance of 2,800 people. A far cry from that 20,000 that they did in Comiskey
Killed
Park.
the concept. Rick Martel and Stan Hansen.
Yeah, pretty much. So on that card, now. This was pretty much AWA and I believe
NWA or World Class.
World Class, yeah. There was no NWA involvement after this.
No thanks.
This show took place May 2nd, 1987. So they skipped a year.
They skipped a year, okay.
Okay, and so you had Sheikh Adnan Al-Qasi, which would better be known as General Adnan in the WWF, defeated Buck Zumhoff.
My man.
DJ Peterson wrestled Super Ninja to a time limit draw. Sherry Martel defeated Medusa Myceli for the World Women's AWA Championship. Kurt Hennig defeated Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA Heavyweight Championship.
Okay.
The Midnight Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, and Ray Stevens defeated Buddy Wolf, Doug Summers, and Kevin Kelly.
What?
Yeah. Ray Stevens and the Rockers. That's
a fucking party.
Yeah. Jerry Blackwell.
You could have just set up a table and let the three of those guys have a party in the ring.
Yeah, just do
a bunch of
lines of coke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry Blackwell defeated Boris Zukov, and in the main event, Jimmy Snuka and Russ Francis defeated the Terrorist and the Mercenary.
All right. I guess you don't want to do Super Clashes anymore.
Well, they did a third one.
Oh God, what was the attendance of that one?
Let me get to it here.
It can't be more than the last one.
This was in 1988 at the UIC Pavilion in Chicago. Representing in this Super Clash was the AWA and World Class and Memphis CWA.
Oh, okay.
This show did 1,672 people with a buy rate of 45,000 homes. Let's see what the results here.
Was this the Kerry Von Erich one?
I think this is the Kerry Von Erich, Jerry Lawler one. Yeah. Chavo Guerrero, Mondo Guerrero, and Hector Guerrero defeated Cactus Jack and the Rock and Roll RPMs of Mike Davis and Tommy Lane. Okay. Eric Embry defeated Jeff Jarrett for the WCWA World Light Heavyweight Championship. Jimmy Valiant defeated Wayne Bloom in 24 seconds. Iceman King Parsons defeated Brickhouse Brown for the Texas Heavyweight Championship. Wendy Richter and the Top Guns, Ricky Rice and Derek Dukes, defeated Bad Company, Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka, and Medusa Myceli with Diamond Dallas Page in their corner.
Okay.
Greg Gagne defeated Ron Garvin by a countout for the AWA International TV Championship. The Syrian Terrorists defeated Bambi, Peggy Lee Leather, Lori Lynn, Brandy May, Malibu, Nina Pocahontas, and Luna Vachon in a street fight lingerie battle.
That sounds like a stripper lineup.
Sergeant Slaughter defeated Colonel De Beers in a boot camp match. The Samoan SWAT team, Samu and Fatu with Buddy Roberts, defeated Michael Hayes and Steve Cox for the WCWA World Tag Team Championship. Wahoo McDaniel defeated Manny Fernandez in an Indian strap match. Jerry Lawler defeated Kerry Von Erich due to referee stoppage in a title unification match for the AWA and World Class Championship. And the main event, the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson fought the Stud Stable, Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden, to a double disqualification.
Ugh.
Yeah, so safe to say that those super clashes...
We're not super.
Yeah, not very super at all. So... I wanted to, let's have a little fun here as we're watching this. This is 1995. This is the OG Forbidden Door, as we have claimed, between WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Share with me, off the top of your head, some, in a dream world, if you will, some Forbidden Door wrestling matches of 1995 out that include the WWF with WCW. Let's say WWF and WCW Forbidden Door fantasy matchups of 1995.
Well, I think I always wanted to see Hogan and Brett in the 90s.
That's one I got on there.
Or Sting and Brett. Brett and anybody, really.
Yeah.
That's
Hogan and Brett, Sting and Brett, I like those.
Taker and Sting was obviously, not 1995. I wasn't really clamoring for that one yet. I don't know. I mean... trying to think of who because 95 was a pretty lean year for the WWF.
Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Or this is, and again, these don't have. I didn't think of these in advance. But
I threw this out.
Would be a good banger of a match. British Bulldog and Arn Anderson, I think, would be a fun match.
That would be a fun match. Yeah.
I think those two guys would have brought it. I mean, Luger having just left there's no real Forbidden Door element to him.
Yeah.
I don't think. I'm like also thinking like in like terms too. Like I don't know, like Jerry Lawler versus like Bobby Heenan in some sort of like stupid gimmicky match. Seeing that they were kind of both like
the heel commentators. Yeah.
You could see something like that. What else was going on in 1995? Mabel was a big deal at that point. Won the King of the Ring. You could probably put him in there with somebody on the WCW side. You're probably...
Like another big guy?
Yeah, probably. I'm trying to think of who they would have... the Yeti or...
The Giant?
The Giant?
Yeah.
You could have done something with that. Or Mabel and his Mo and all those guys.
Men on a Mission.
Yeah, I'm against the Dungeon of Doom, maybe. What else? Yokozuna and the Giant, I think, would have been a big ticket.
Yeah.
Owen Hart against Sting. Owen Hart against Macho Man.
Yeah.
Owen Hart against Jusher Thunder Liger. Owen Hart against Chris Benoit.
Yeah, that would have been some good stuff.
Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah.
Owen Hart would have really checked all the... Brian Pillman. Flying Brian, I should say.
Bret Hart and Benoit.
Bret Hart really, I think, would have covered about... You could have put him with anybody. He would have been a very interchangeable guy. He didn't necessarily have to be the main event.
Yeah.
Like I said, my dream match with him and Hogan at this time frame wouldn't have necessarily been a must-have, because you could have, if you were building a card, because I think you could have put Bret against Hogan as much as you could have put Bret against Liger. You know what I mean? So that's how good Bret was, and you could say the same for Shawn too. Let me think. Who else?
Undertaker against the entire Dungeon of Doom, considering that most of Undertaker's career was early on. That time frame was all about slaying the dragons and the different monsters. You put
the giant,
put him in there with the giant, the shark, Kamala, the Zodiac.
1995, Hunter Hearst Helmsley's in the game still, so you could probably put him in the ring with.
Like a Johnny B. Bad. They did that later in 96. Yeah. As we see, Johnny B. Bad getting the victory due to the disqualification over the top rope. You can't throw your opponent over the top rope, which seemed to be a convenient rule that they like to throw out there every once in a while when they needed a safe booking.
Yeah.
It was never something that was consistently followed.
Look, I don't mind a rule like that if you maybe had a division or a title centered around something a little bit more combat oriented.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where it only happened in those matches where it was established in this match, here are the rules.
I hated the I think I've told you this, but when Bill Watts was, during his tenure in WCW a few years prior to this, Bill Watts had implemented the no moves off the top rope. Yet there was a light heavyweight division where you had a Flying Brian and a Jushin Liger and all these guys that the big appeal of that division was the top rope maneuvers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then Watts tried to rationalize it you got to find a way to creatively do the move without the referee seeing.
I understand that logic, but that is so. That's a small lane to operate in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the more you do that, then the more silly it fucking gets. And if you keep breaking the rules, then what the fuck do the rules matter? You know what I mean? So.
Oh, I know. It's crazy.
So why use that? Why lean on that over and hide the ability to have an entertaining performance where you can jump off the top rope and it not be a big deal. So as it showed to be a dumb idea.
Now, also on this card, as we're watching this, there's a triangle match between Sting, Lex Luger, and Ric Flair, and the winner of that match will go on to face Randy Savage for the WCW World Heavyweight title in the main event of this show. So some of these guys were doing double duty. Yep. Sting and Luger both were doing double duty. Randy Savage also not only defending his title in the main event, but he's also part of that WCW team.
Yeah.
What's your take on having some of these guys do double duty? Do you think it was necessary to put a guy like a Sting and a Savage and a Luger on multiple times on this card? Or could WCW have picked other individuals for this World Cup team or whatever to lighten the load for some of these other guys?
So I think they're just trying to play have their cake and eat it too. Those are some big top flight Japan guys, so you got to give them big flight, top flight WCW guys. Mm-hmm. But to me, the purpose of maybe putting someone in multiple matches on a show, to me, needs to have, or at least historically, when it's done correctly, it really puts over that wrestler who's wrestled more than one night.
Yeah.
A prime example being Bret Hart at WrestleMania 10. Mm-hmm. He had the match with Owen. He wrestled Yoko. There was that storyline over the course of the show, overcoming that odds. Mm-hmm. Daniel Bryan, WrestleMania 30, same thing. One small nugget of one that really won me over as a fan was NXT TakeOver New Orleans, Adam Cole.
Yep.
He had the ladder match. To me, the best multi-man non-tag team ladder match that WWE's ever put on. That ladder match at TakeOver.
That was awesome, yeah.
Amazing ladder match. It's one of my favorite matches I've ever watched live.
Yeah. That's right, you were there for that.
And that was such an excellent match. And he won it to become the first North American champion. But then he also wrestled later in the night for the tag team titles, where Roderick Strong joined the Undisputed Era. And just seeing what
that was done because of the injury to Bobby Fish, though.
Yes,
that wasn't the original idea.
Right, but what it did was it solidified Adam Cole having gone through that ladder match and then going through and winning the tag team titles. Made you go, wow, he's a fucking big time player.
Yep.
And then I also remembered that weekend, which wasn't on camera and wasn't a part of a storyline, but I grew to like Adam Cole even more. Is they were doing championship NXT title tournaments at Fan Access WrestleMania.
I do remember that, yeah.
And Adam Cole had to wrestle in those matches as the champions of those two titles.
Right.
So and that came to me after TakeOver. I'm like, oh my god.
I think they did. I think if I'm not mistaken, they aired those live on the network.
They may have, but they weren't storyline oriented necessarily. You know what I mean?
No. We apologize. There was a little technical glitch here as my system had gone out on us. So right now we are I paused the recording for this next match. This is the Shinjiro Otani match against Eddie Guerrero. So we are currently at 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 34 seconds. I'm going to do a quick countdown, press play, and we'll be on our way. And we'll get back to what we were talking about with Adam Cole in just a minute. So in 3, 2, 1, hit play. Now, you were saying, sorry about that.
So, yeah, no, to go around the block, to just walk across the street, I'll say that, like, it was, to me, when a guy does double duty like that, even if it's unintentional, I grow to respect that wrestler more and kind of have more of an investment in that guy. And Adam Cole did that weekend, even though it wasn't highlighted, even though it wasn't like a Daniel Bryan or a Bret Hart, it was like, that guy's a real fucking wrestler, and that guy deserves the acclaim that or the push that could come with that. So, to walk across the street around the block, that's how I perceive doing double duty, especially because you're talking about wrestling and the physical risk it takes to double that risk there's got to be some sort of intention to it. If you're putting the card together, you're booking, in my opinion at least.
I think
what do I know about it?
My guess is, and I could be wrong, but the intention behind putting Savage and Sting and Luger, having them all do double duty, and even eventually even Flair, was to kind of build the disadvantage that WCW was having in this series of matches with New Japan.
Right, I think you could probably argue that, and I didn't even really think of that. Now, wait, did Flair wrestle another match other than... And that's probably the intention.
So Flair wrestled the triangle match to then eventually get to Savage in the main event, in the singles match.
See, to me, that doesn't make sense. Where's the intention? You know what I mean? Other than maybe what you're saying, because to me, the intention would be maybe Flair doesn't wrestle in a triangle match or something, or maybe Savage has to wrestle. Where's the disadvantage? Where's the overcoming adversity?
I do remember the build being because
where's the story?
Sting and Luger had that on-screen friendship, and then Luger kind of had that alliance with Jimmy Hart and the Dungeon of Doom. I guess you could say he was like a de facto member of the group.
Yeah.
And so the build up into that matchup was can Sting and Luger coexist, or can Sting trust Luger? It's a triangle match for a shot at the title later in the night, and Flair was just kind of left. Flair was playing third wheel,
right,
in the build up to that,
and that made
while
him
at the same time Flair also had his issues with Savage.
Yeah, and I think, but to me that muddies the waters. To me, I would have done it differently, where maybe either Flair doesn't have to wrestle, and maybe the title's defended in a triangle match to face Flair.
Yeah,
and their story could be played out with Savage trying to...
Savage is the champ.
Get to Flair.
Yeah.
Again, just spitballing.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
But I just... It sounds like they made sure to get everyone 2 matches to make it even. And that's not interesting. And so, you know what I mean? Where they could have maybe stacked the deck against Savage. Thank you. A perfect example of wrestling multiple times one night. Savage at WrestleMania 4.
Yeah.
That's the first time...
That's the blueprint of that.
Versus DiBiase only having to wrestle twice.
Yeah.
Before facing Savage.
Yep.
So again, that's a story being told where I feel like they were probably let's make sure everybody wrestles twice so we don't, piss somebody off and make it fair. It would have been a cooler story if maybe that didn't happen that way.
Yep.
If maybe one person was at a disadvantage wrestling twice where someone maybe had the advantage wrestling once. I only say these things because that's what we've been exposed to as fans, and that's a logic that makes sense to me. So.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's not. It was what it was. I mean, that if there's anything that I could nitpick about this show, I think it was them shoehorning that into the World Cup concept.
Right, right.
If they just did the 7 matches for the World Cup, it would have been fine. But I think also too they were trying to compete. They were trying to. I mean, they were competing with the WWF on their television programming, and I think it probably would have. I'm just guessing here, but knowing what we do know about the ins and outs of the Monday Night Wars, I'm guessing that they wanted to put the world champion in a world championship match on their pay-per-view because to oppose what the WWF was doing.
Yeah,
at that time.
Here's an idea that would have been cool. That just came to me. Because to me, the best of 7 stuff where you tally, that to me is a little bit anticlimactic because
Well, I want to talk to you about a best of 7 in a minute, but go ahead.
Right, but to me, keeping score like that to me is irrelevant. I know WWE's been doing it with the Survivor Series, and I don't fucking care because you're gonna find a way to make it come down to the last match.
Yeah,
where that's not
well,
you can start predicting.
I will say though, they did that a couple of times, but then there were also times where there was a couple of years when they did the Raw and SmackDown head to head at those Survivor Series where. There was one year where it went to 7 matches, and they had a good little build up. But then there was another year where they were keeping score, but it didn't. I think one of the 2, Raw or SmackDown, had already won 4 matches out of the 7.
Yeah.
Yet they were still keeping track of the match.
And there's a part of that just isn't interesting to me. So that's why, to me, I would if we could maybe reimagine this for a second, say you don't keep score, and say the winners of the matches advance to a title match later in the night. Whether it's the WCW World Title or
the United States title.
Well, I would have said I would say maybe the WCW World Title just to make it interesting to the United States audience, and then you have the New Japan champion defending his title in a straight up match.
Yeah.
So there's appeal to all of that. And let me just to break it out a little bit. If all these matches are the winners of these matches will advance tonight to face the WCW World Champion, and that could be a 7-way or a 6-way, right? And then later in the night, also included in the card is whoever the New Japan World Champion is facing Lex Luger. Oh my God, Lex Luger could take the world title from Japan and bring it to WCW, and those are little hooks that could make it interesting on top of the brand warfare, if you will, or the World Cup element of it.
Yeah.
Where I feel those things it doesn't end when someone won 4 matches.
Yeah.
It's still, it goes throughout the whole night.
There's stakes throughout the,
Yeah, and like I said, if Otani beats Guerrero and he gets to be included in the match, well, it's not likely he's going to win. If you've done it properly, it's still interesting. And you can still kind of have that element of maybe he'll win. Just maybe Lex Luger will win the New Japan Championship. So things like that. Yeah. Again, where you're not shoehorning yourself into keeping score and tallying and all this other stuff. Because it's definitely, that's to me very that's very narrow.
Yeah, I will say that, the outcome of this best of 7 series with, WCW New Japan, we saw Sting and the I'm not going to spoil it, but anyways, the winners, fuck it, whatever.
It's 1995.
1995.
People know by now.
People know by now, yeah. Sting and the WCW team, they walked out with a trophy. But there was nothing following that. WCW didn't award them with, all right, you get this title shot, then you get this title shot. Right, you know what I mean? You're in the Cruiserweight division, you're going to get a shot at the Cruiserweight title. Things like that.
Thanks for representing WCW. Bringing home the trophy for us.
You know what I mean? It was, for instance, I'll go back to, it was a Survivor Series one year. And what year was it?
Talking about the match for survival?
No, not that. No, not the match for survival. There was a Survivor Series event. I think it was in 2004. Yeah, it was in 2004. The main event was Triple H, Batista, Snitsky, and Edge against Jericho, Benoit, Orton, and I think it was Maven.
Okay.
And if
rather forgettable main event, it sounds.
Yeah, and the winning team got to control Monday Night Raw for 30 days because Bischoff decided he had had enough, and he was taking a vacation because he was sick of the inmates running the asylum. And so each week there was a different theme. So Maven had the first week because the baby faces won. So Maven got a title shot at Triple H, and then this guy got a title shot the next week at Triple H. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is pretty cool.
That the 30 days, for 30 days, we're gonna, and then within that 30 days of somebody different controlling Monday Night Raw each week, stuff. I don't even remember what happened, but things transpired to where it called for Bischoff to come back and take back the throne, if you will, and get things under control.
Yeah.
I think that eventually that set up the that elimination chamber in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There was a finish to a match, then the winner was supposed to face Hunter or something, and there was I think it was like a battle royal finish, and
That's
both
the one
guys.
Where Edge cashed in. So that was
That was 05. 06 was when he cashed in on Cena. So 05 was
05 into 06.
Yeah.
So wait, they were in Puerto Rico back-to-back years?
No, they were in Puerto Rico the first year when they had the vacant world title. Shawn Michaels was the referee. They were building up Batista with him and Hunter.
So that Edge Chamber match wasn't in Puerto Rico? That cash in?
No.
Okay.
That was in Albany.
Okay.
That was in Albany in 06.
Got it. Yep. That makes sense. Because they did the sex celebration the next day.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there was this. What would you call it? So there was issues with the finish of a battle royal. The winner was supposed to face Hunter, and then they decided that I think it was going to be a triple threat, and then there was some sort of finish there that fucked it all up. So then Bischoff came back and was like, "I'm stripping you of the title, and we're going to put it up against all these guys in an elimination chamber," and then that's how they eventually built up to him and Batista again. Oh, nice German suplex there by and Otani.
But that's cool because guess what? As we talked about it earlier, you've got that December period where it's kind of we got to find a way to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, these guys are in control of Monday Night Raw for the next 30 days. That makes it interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That gives you something to okay, we have to kind of check out what that's going to look like as a fan. So that's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They should bring that back.
As we're watching this match, Eddie Guerrero and Otani, I saw a post on Facebook. Somebody had asked the question, and I wanted your take on it. Did Eddie Guerrero have any classic matches in WCW aside from his matches with Mysterio? And I don't know if something that you remember that you could.
I really probably can't recall any. Yeah, I'm sure there are. I just can't recall any.
Yeah,
I'm sure he had some bangers with Dean Malenko.
Yep. He had a fucking fantastic match with Jericho at the Fall Brawl 97 pay-per-view.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of
where he won the Cruiserweight title from Jericho. It was a fucking banger.
Do I only just remember the match because he wrestled 6 at Sold Out? Was that a good match? Was that a ladder match?
It was a ladder match. Yeah. I don't remember if it was good or not.
Yeah, maybe I just remember because it was 6.
Yeah.
But I don't. Those. I couldn't tell you. Not a clue.
We know what I do. We talked about this earlier, and it just kind of came to me now as we're watching this match. But if you notice, there is some international representation in WCW's contingent against the New Japan team. Eddie Guerrero from Mexico, Chris Benoit from Canada, Alex Wright from Germany.
Yep.
It's funny that I just stumbled upon that right now without, as we talked about it a few minutes
If you remember,
prior.
and I remember wanting to get the video game, but they had the video game WCW versus the World.
Yeah.
Remember they
on Nintendo 64, yeah.
I never played it, never got a chance to get it, but I always thought, probably somewhat in connection to this, I was like, that's so cool. That's what this is. This is WCW, well, not even versus the World, it's versus Japan, but it's WCW versus, it's brand warfare. It's world warfare, a World Cup insinuating, even though it's a worldly thing, it doesn't have that international flavor. Glad we're kind of talking about this now, but I remember reading or seeing a TikTok of an interview Triple H did where he kind of laid out his vision for NXT going forward. Yes, he's got NXT right now. They're going to do the NXT Europe and NXT South Africa, just hypotheticals. Australia, Lucha.
He was trying to create his own territory system within his developmental.
He had made that. He had pitched that at a business partners meeting pre-COVID. But
I do remember that,
and that was cool. And I look forward to that. Hopefully that's starting to make its way back. But he had talked about the comparisons of it, and he said, look, Raw and SmackDown is the NFL. Raw's the AFC, SmackDown's the NFC, red and blue, just for comparisons.
Yeah.
It's the mass appeal shows. Everybody knows that they're on, whether or not they're watching or not.
Yeah.
And obviously we hope they're watching. But NXT, when all these brands pop up, that's college football, where you've got your American fan base, and let's just call that the SEC conference. You know what I mean? Where you've got your Georgia Bulldogs, your Alabama Crimson Tide, right?
Yep.
And NXT Europe is the ACC, Duke, Carolina, Miami, so on and so forth. Where you have these local fans who are watching that territory.
Yep.
That are where it's a little bit more of a geographical loyalty to that area, to that brand.
Yeah.
And then every year, he even used the phrase. He's like, every year, maybe one year it's going to be in Australia, but we'll do the World Cup, the NXT World Cup, where there is that type of warfare that takes place where the best of these programs can come together, and there is that type of element that we can introduce to it, which again, we're probably several years away from it, but I look forward to that because it does also mirror, like you said, the territories, the NWA. Like, NXT is the new NWA, while Raw and SmackDown is the WWE.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how a wrestler is presented and operates in the WWE versus NXT is completely different. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And, you can hop around.
Yeah.
And that element I like. I think that's cool. And I do look forward to hopefully seeing that get kind of actualized.
I think obviously, like you said, that's something that they had planned on, and they were going in that direction.
Right.
Pre-COVID. They had to shut down the UK territory. I think they're rebranding it to more NXT Europe. But, eventually we'll see India and maybe, Latin America or Mexico.
Definitely.
I think the Canadian wrestlers might end up getting lumped into North America. So you might see, NXT North America, things like that. As we see Otani getting the victory over Eddie Guerrero, which brings them up, I think, 3-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
3-2. So we got a few more matches of this best of 7 series to go. On the subject of nice drop kick, on the subject of best of 7 series, I just recently watched the episode of Dark Side of the Ring with Magnum TA, the Magnum TA story. I don't know if you caught that or not.
I have not.
And they talked about the best of 7 series with him and Nikita Koloff, which I had not seen those matches. I do remember reading about them in the magazines, in the After Mags. If I'm not mistaken, I once had an After Mag that had the two of them on the cover. And I took the cover of the magazine, and in our grandfather's house when I was a kid, I'm not sure if you remember, but I used to have a cardboard like fort, like a house. I turned it into my house, and I took pictures from the wrestling magazines and I slapped them on.
I can't say I remember that.
But before I continue that story, I'm going to play the audio here for this Randy Savage promo because I'm sure it's pretty interesting. We are at 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 47 seconds.
To think about, Tenzan, perhaps down the international competition, and then after that, the triangle match.
Forget about the triangle match. One thing at a time. The pressure's on me, and then hopefully the pressure's on Sting. To infinity and beyond. 3-2, our backs against the door. You know what? I like being the underdog. I've been the underdog all my life, but that's okay. That's cool. And the Stinger, he's cool too. And you know what? I gotta admit something. Lex Luger, he put that guy in the torture rack. You know, it's a team type situation, and then it reverses itself to infinity and beyond. Breaking on through to the other side. I like that. I got chills up and down my spine. I'm wrapped into the moment. This is a moment in time, and I'm going to take advantage of it. Tenzan! You can't understand what I'm saying, but I'm coming to get you, yeah.
I just got off the telephone just moments ago with the suspended Hulk Hogan.
What did he say?
He wanted to know what frame of mind you were in.
Tell him I'm in the zone. He knows what the zone's all about. That's what makes us different. That's what makes Sting different. That's what makes Lex Luger different. And difference is that it's 3-2. And I'm going in there to even the score. Stinger! Be there for the USA. Red, white, and blue. Yeah. I'm out of here. I can't say another word.
Thank you very much. The Macho Man Randy Savage is going into his matchup with Tenzan as New Japan leads 3-2. Right now, let's get you
He
back
doesn't
up to
even
the ring.
flinch. When Savage jumped back in for that last part, he didn't even flinch.
Yeah. Well, he's a pro.
Yeah.
I mean, Okerlund was the best, the best stick man. You had a Jim Morrison Doors reference. You had a Toy Story reference in there. Savage was all over the place.
Oh yeah.
But back to what I was saying before I allowed myself to be rudely interrupted by Randy Savage. What was I talking about again?
Best of sevens.
Best of sevens, yeah. So I didn't watch. So I had the cover of the After Mag with Nikita and Magnum, and I had it like taped to the wall of this cardboard fort that I had.
Right.
I had never seen any of these matches up until recently. I was kind of going through YouTube. There's not, you can't find many of them on the network or on the Peacock. A lot of these matches took place not at non-televised events, but not on their main television show, which was World Championship Wrestling at that time in 1986. But you said earlier that you weren't really big on like those best of 7 type matches. More recently, in 2023, I've been watching a lot of 1998 Monday Night Raw and Monday Nitro, and even some of the Thunders, and that was during a period of time where Booker T and Chris Benoit had their best of 7 series, which to this day they still hold as some great matches.
Right.
Great matches. Tell me why you're not a huge fan of best of 7s, and what was your take on those Booker T, Chris Benoit matches?
I thought they were good matches, don't get me wrong. I just don't like the predictability of it in the sense that, like, I don't know, like you're gonna make one guy get swept by the other. Like I feel like you there's just less, like, it's a very predictable story to tell. Like, and unless you are intentionally trying to maybe illustrate the dominance of one wrestler over the other. But and in this one, just kind of in explaining this comes to me, I feel like I saw like an interview, in recent years where Stephanie McMahon, talks about the appeal of WWE versus sports, and she says there's no routes in WWE. There's no routes in what we do. Everything's exciting. And I know she's fluffing that up, but like yeah. Why? So to that point, there's no. Why would you intentionally make something a route? Like, is that effective occasionally? Yes, but I don't know. I just feel like it's a very I don't know. It's just predictable, and it becomes less about the matches, I feel like, than it does about like keeping score.
Okay.
And that's just, again, I'm in the minority in this. That's why, like, it just doesn't matter to me what it is, as long as they're just wrestling.
No, you make a good point in terms of predictability.
Like, why would you want to make it less than 7? You know what I mean? If you write it and control it, you know what I mean?
Because as we're watching this is Tenzan and Randy Savage. Randy Savage is the WCW World Champion. Do you really think on WCW's home turf that they're going to have their World Champion lose to an outsider?
Right.
Right.
And exactly. Even more so for placement on the card, because if they lose this match, then they lose the competition.
Yeah.
So it's like, now he's not losing. Even double that's just added to what you just said.
Like if you put let's say if you put the first match on, it was Liger and Benoit. Liger got the win. But then they put Savage on second.
That makes sense.
Okay, and then Savage is the first one to get WCW on the board, as opposed to being the one to save them.
Right.
Like now he's in that position. I mean, I get it from a position where his character, the stature of his character, he's a big deal. So of course they're going to bring in the big guns
for the clutch situation
towards the end.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I get that. Yeah. But at the same time, did they really need to put him in this position, given the fact that he's the world champion?
Right.
You could have put him on second, and then you could have taken someone like, I don't know, Johnny B. Bad, or even Luger, and put Luger in that role, as Luger's the one that saves WCW from getting eliminated and forcing it to go to a 7th and final match.
Right.
So I from looking at it as we're watching it and having this discussion, I totally get and understand why you wouldn't be a fan necessarily. And I think also too, it's one of those concepts where it's got to be done with the right guys, and there's got to be the right story involved for it to be intriguing and for it to work. Like in more recent years, they've done what was it, NXT? They had Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano, and they did a series of matches. They did the 2 out of 3 falls match, then they did the straight up singles match, a Takeover 30, and then they did a 3 stages of hell match where there was different gimmicks within that match and stuff like that. So they didn't drag it out all the way to 7 matches.
2 out of 3 falls is a little bit more forgivable because it's only 3 falls, and if you lost 2-0, it's not like there's a story to tell there. You know what I mean? Where like you're not like, oh my god, now we got 3 more of these matches, 4 or 5 more of these matches. You know what I mean? Like again, it's the acceptable, in my opinion, it's the more acceptable application of the story that you want to tell in a series, a tallied series of matches, a best of. You know what I mean? It's just too long.
I mean, I go also revert back to on the AEW side, the Death Triangle and Elite best of 7 matches, where I paid attention and watched them all. I mean, they were exciting to watch. You know, there's a couple of them were pretty much the same.
Sure.
But there was different matches and different elements. I'll give them credit. They tried to keep some kind of continuity in terms of what story they were trying to tell within those matches. Where a couple of them were the same, but the finishes were similar because they had used, I think, like a hammer in one of them, and they tried to use it. You know, they went back to that tool to try to elevate the story. And then eventually, as the matches went forward, and I think the Elite were down like 3-0 or something like that. They tried to add that sports-centric feel with Tony Khan buying rights to the NBA on NBC theme music. You know,
but that's even like another thing, like 3-0. Like okay, you're telling me you're going to get swept? Like, you know what I mean? Now we're going to play the comeback story, which is fabricated in this arena versus in a real sports event.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But the one thing I'm happy that they didn't go with was the predictable route that the Elite won, and after being down 3-0 and doing the big comeback to take the whole series. You know, like they came close and they lost to Death Triangle in that Trios Ladders match.
Did they get to 7?
They got to 7, which was the Trios Ladders match. They held it at the Forum in LA.
Right.
They made sure that they did it in like the California area because it was it's a home for the Bucks and for Lucha, you know. And I watched the series, and the matches were fun. I'm not going to sit here and knock AEW, you know, like a lot of people. I will point out the criticism and things I don't like about it, which has the tendency to rub some people the wrong way.
Right.
But I will say that I do think that when it came to laying out the series, I appreciated the effort and how they did it. It didn't seem like we got all the same matches in the series,
right? And that's incredibly hard to do. So,
and there was also the story that they were trying to tell, not only of the series of matches between these two teams, but the Elite just coming back.
Pedro Morales, I think, doing commentary there.
You might be correct.
Yeah, I think that. I don't know who the other guy was, but that looked like Pedro Morales with him.
I do remember WCW at one point did have a Spanish announcers team that they were, which was beneficial to them because a lot of their stars, you know, were from the Lucha Libre realm. But the idea of the Elite just coming back after the CM Punk debacle from the All Out event,
right,
and the story of like, are they still a great trio? You know, going into this best of 7 series, can they still? You know, that was the appeal of the 3 losses that they suffered. You know, 3 in a row was. Do these guys still got it? You know, they haven't teamed together in a while. So I appreciated the continuity and the effort in that sense. For as much as I have a tendency to be very critical of what AEW does, there's times like that where I can appreciate that continuity and the effort that they put in to making that story somewhat watchable. As Savage coming up for the top rope here, this is probably going to be it right here, I would imagine. I thought he was going to kick him.
Yeah, same.
1, 2, 3. Savage
evens it up.
He saves it, and we go to a 7th match here. Between who's it? Sting and who's he wrestling?
Kensuke Sasaki.
Kensuke Sasaki, yes. Which, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was the WCW United States champion at this time.
He was.
So
that's why I was mixing up that Bash of the Beach match earlier when we were talking about that.
All right. I got you. So right now, here's what I'm going to do. Is Randy Savage and Tenzan have ended their match. I'm going to pause it here at 1 hour, 32 minutes, 42 seconds, and pause it as they're showing the replay of Randy Savage. We're going to do a quick little bathroom break, and we'll be back very shortly. All right, bathroom break is over. We are back, And we are going to get into this watch along. We are at 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 42 seconds with a paused Randy Savage on the top rope for the replay coverage of this match that just concluded. Hope everyone's cleaned out and hydrated and ready to go for another hour and some change left of this watch along here. So I'll do a countdown and we'll get back into it. In 3, 2, 1, hit play. Savage dropping the elbow on Tenzan to tie it up in this best of 7 series. Have you seen those Hidden Treasure episodes? There was one, I think, on him, where they're looking
on Savage.
Yeah, there's one where they're looking for a robe and a crown. I haven't seen
the Savage one. The only ones that I've seen that I at least sat through because they were interesting were the Andre one, the Jerry Lawler one, Ric Flair, and what was it? Jerry Lawler?
The Flair one was really
Andy
interesting.
Kaufman. Or with Jerry Lawler, I guess. Andy Kaufman, because they talked about Bill Apter had Andy Kaufman's neck brace,
which I think was totally fake.
Yeah,
I think some of those are just for TV purposes. I don't think a lot of these guys really like the Flair one looked legit with all the robes.
Yeah, the Andre one too, because they went all the way to the ranch where his ranch hand.
I didn't see that one.
That one was cool. They got, which I'm not sure this one was real, but the foot cast that he wore when he broke his leg in the 80s or 70s that you see in Tuesday Night Titans episodes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Soft cast.
Yeah.
Not soft cast, a hard cast, a paper mache cast. It's fucking tall as shit.
Yeah.
They had that. I think the Warehouse had that. But they go one thing, and basically it was Big Show and Mark Henry and Top Dollar, right? And Mark Henry's crying every 2 fucking seconds. They pull out a fingernail of Andre the Giant.
They really pull out fingernail?
No,
but you know
that's how he was crying on Flair levels.
Yeah.
So there was a part of the episode where
oh god, I know, right?
Where they found a passport of Andre's, and it showed that for a guy who traveled as much as he did, he had multiple passports.
Yeah.
And this passport showed what countries were on the passport that he hit up, right?
He stamped
up,
Thailand
and fucking Australia.
He'd been everywhere.
It was but that's cool. I wish I had that. This is a real passport from Andre the Giant, and they were marveling over it, and it's Big Show, it's Top Dollar, it's the wife of the ranch hand of his old ranch in North Carolina. I'm sure you've seen her in interviews.
Yeah.
So she had some of this stuff, and that's who they hit up. So when she pulls this thing out, Mark Henry has to leave the room because he starts crying, and then they have to address, in a sidebar, confessional, yeah, Mark gets really emotional, and it was cool, but there's that. But the Flair one I really like too. Like you said, you saw it. There was a huge back and forth about the robes, and particularly the black feather one.
Yeah.
The butterfly feather one.
Yeah.
I like some of them. They're pretty cool. So yeah, that's a cool little
show.
Flair's
they're cutting a promo with Flair currently. We're not gonna play the audio for it, but it's actually the timing of it and this conversation is interesting because you and I remember when Mom and Dad took us to Disney.
Yes.
In the summer of '96.
Mm-hmm.
We met Ric Flair at Bradley International Airport in Hartford.
Yep.
And I was just recently at my go-to wrestling memorabilia spot, Ken's Cards and Collectibles in Berlin, Connecticut.
Yep.
It's got a wrestling room on top of all kinds of other sports memorabilia in there. It's a pretty cool little place.
I gotta go over
there. Is still, it was. I almost bought it the last time I went, and I'm actually now I think I want to get it next time I go. But there is a boarding pass and a plane. I think it's either a ticket or a boarding pass of the flight that you and I went on.
Oh shit!
Autographed by Ric Flair.
How much is that?
I think it's $35.
I'll go buy it now.
Yeah,
that's cool as shit.
Yeah.
That's affordable, and I was literally on that plane with him.
Yeah.
I think I told that story recently, but the one thing I always like to tell about that story, if we're talking about artifacts as well, is that back at that time frame in WCW, we're talking 6 months from what we're watching right now, Arn Anderson used to carry around that silver halberd.
Yes.
It was used as a weapon of sorts.
Yep.
He was carrying that halberd onto the plane, and I remember recognizing it, and I was standing behind him in line to get on the plane,
Yep.
and I touched it.
Yeah.
And he looked around and was like, and I'm like, oh, I didn't touch. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he kind of like he felt something touch his briefcase, and I like played it off like I didn't. But yeah,
Arn Anderson,
that was
speaking of
the
Arn Anderson,
Halliburton. That was the briefcase.
Arn Anderson does a great Iron Sheik impression. You wouldn't think somebody from Georgia with a southern drawl could do an Iron Sheik impression, but Arn Anderson does a fantastic Iron Sheik impression. If you ever Google like Google Iron Sheik stories on YouTube or whatever,
Arn Anderson. Huh?
Arn Anderson tells a hilarious. It's one of the early stories of him and Iron Sheik, but he does a great Iron Sheik impressions. We see Sting coming out, waving the flag. So now they've brought the United States pride into this best of 7. Before, nobody else was waving the flag.
Right.
But now it's the 7th match. Game's on the line. Sting's got to break out, all the heavy hitters, and that includes the American flag in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yep.
So while we're on the subject of Sting, it's been rumored that He's nearing the end of his career. He's currently, been an attraction piece, if you will, for AEW, kind of like a mentor to the Darby Allin character, which I think it's fitting. It works for him. It's fitting, and they don't overexpose him. As the match is underway, 3-3, tie ball games. We're in the 7th game here, 7th match, if you will. So Sting's towards the end of his run in AEW.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think his contract runs out towards the end of this year. But, for years, the big question was, would he ever eventually go to the WWE, which we did see a number of years ago.
Right.
A very short-lived run. Very disappointing, in my opinion. What was your take on his run?
I was not disappointed with that run at all. I thought it was what it was. I thought he was very lucky to get a world title match. I thought that was a silly thing.
You didn't like that?
It was predictable. He wasn't going to win the belt. Why?
But the idea of someone like him who was so attached to the lineage of WCW getting an opportunity to compete for the WWE Championship that late in his career, there's
a story to tell, and I appreciate the story, and I like
that appeal.
But
was
to me,
what sold it for me.
And I think we had this conversation yesterday. That's a perfect challenge internally for the players involved in putting that match together to make. You have now your task is to make me believe in that match in moments that Sting might actually win, and I don't think they did that.
No, in that match they did,
and I don't think they successfully pulled that off. And that's what I mean. Like that the runway is very small to make that an enjoyable match when it's predictable. But again, the greats can do that. The greats can make that challenge. They can answer that call.
Do you think somebody else would have been better suited for that role than Rollins?
No, I don't think so. I mean, his neck would have been broken, so I guess anyone would have been better from that vantage point.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was a Rollins issue. Just the match, I mean, you're also talking about a 60-something-year-old wrestler. How good can the match be? I'm like I said, I'm just of the belief that great matches come from answering a challenge. Again, from a creative standpoint, that can be satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I sort of picked up this philosophy from hearing a Shawn Michaels interview specific to his match with Randy Orton at Survivor Series 2007, where the stipulation was, now this was a creative thing.
It was a great stipulation.
The stipulation was he could not use the super kick in the match.
Otherwise he gets disqualified.
But so the challenge for him as a Michael Hickenbottom, the performer, trying to make a good match using that framework is, how can I make the audience engage the audience with that barrier, that shackle on me, right?
There's a limitation there.
That actual challenge.
Yeah.
As
that's like going to that's like going to a concert and your favorite band doesn't play their greatest hit.
Yes. How can they make the show entertaining?
Yes.
And a perfect example, my Citizen Kane of wrestling matches, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. No one believed Shawn Michaels was going to win that match, even as a smart fan. But they made you believe.
In 47 minutes, you thought he was ending that streak.
The predictability element was overcome. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by Sting in that match. The predictability element was not overcome. That doesn't make it a bad match.
No.
It just doesn't make it a very good or great match. And that's, to me, the art form at its finest. When they can take something as insurmountable as something predictable or the shackles of something else, creatively or not, when they can overcome that with their abilities as great performers.
All right, so let me ask you this question, okay? You just mentioned it. The ability to get people to believe he had a chance of winning in the title match. Does that same philosophy apply had they decided to go with Sting Undertaker?
Yes.
At any point in time?
100%.
Okay.
If we're talking like Sting Undertaker, like, for the streak or...
No, because that point Sting
lay out the scenario.
Streak had already been broken. Okay.
Okay, that's right. So Sting came back in 2015.
2014, he wrestled Hunter at WrestleMania in 2015. Okay. Mm-hmm. They put Undertaker and Wyatt. My dream scenario had all those pieces of the puzzle together was Undertaker loses to Bray at that WrestleMania because he had lost the previous year to Brock. Okay.
So you're saying he loses again?
I'm saying he loses again.
See, that makes it predictable. But
hold on. He loses again, okay? Sting loses to Triple H the way we saw it, that which I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this, but yeah.
And then Undertaker kind of has this fork in the road type of feeling where it's like, my streak was broken. I wanted to come back to see if I still had it. And the young kid, the young upstart Bray Wyatt, He proved that
he got the best of me.
I may not have it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where Sting comes in and says, everyone's been wanting to see you and me go at it. Let's see if you got one more left with me.
Yeah, I only got one. Let's see if you got one.
Yeah, I'm only here because I want to face you.
That's a great story. There's nothing predictable about that. And that's actually a good thing. And I think at that point, the attraction is just seeing them for one time only. Once in a lifetime, if you will. Say it was during the streak, and that's what the streak matches became, which to me became the best part of from 23 till the streak ended. That was the Undertaker's finest because it was predictable.
Yeah,
he was not losing these matches. Yeah. For a very long. You just didn't believe he was losing.
Although that Orton match at 21 had
throw that one in too.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That was a pretty fun match. So
we'll say
getting to the finish here.
Let's say from 20 to 30, Undertaker. It was rather predictable, right? So the challenge becomes, as the wrestler, the professional that's trying to make an entertaining match, how do I overcome that hump, that barrier that fans have of he's going to win the match.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? How do I make it entertaining along the way, knowing it's still the predictable outcome that's going to come into play? That's what makes things great. So to your scenario. I think you've taken the predictability element out of it, so that's actually a good story. If it was, say, during the streak, then that's the challenge now.
Match
like
over.
Streak matches, and just like that,
WCW wins.
All is good in America again.
Yep.
The clouds have been lifted.
Yep.
But yeah,
those evil foreigners, they didn't get the best of them.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think Sting would have had the challenge. I feel like at Sting's stage of his career that also Undertaker would have been the real life, like, fuck, we're old.
Yeah.
How can we do this? And I think that would have been cool too. And it wouldn't have been, and to the what you laid out, let's say Bray Wyatt does win, then I think you have that all things equal element. And otherwise, I would still tip it to Taker.
Sting goes into the Hall of Fame the following year in Texas. Undertaker had the rumors were at that time that Undertaker was going to call it quits after that WrestleMania when he wrestled Shane McMahon. So imagine Undertaker going out on his Shield against Sting that weekend in Texas. That would have been a nice little way to kind of send him off.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
and even send Sting off to that extent. Sting basically came to WWE because he wanted that match.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate.
And unfortunately, he didn't get it. And I just actually read recently. I've never read this, but I read this recently. Someone attended one of those Undertaker, one man dead show experiences, those speaking engagements.
Yeah.
And the topic of Sting came up. Somebody asked the question. And Undertaker had admitted that he turned down the match with Sting in WWE because he was not confident in the quality of the of the in-ring match and what it was going to be. He was not confident that they were going to have a good quality match, which I'm kind of surprised with, considering he wrestled Goldberg in Saudi Arabia a few years later. And
Money talks there, I would say.
Well, yeah. He got a big payday out of that deal.
But outside of that match, like, he was wrestling with people who were carrying the load in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Bray Wyatt carried that program and did a fantastic job in that match with him. Brock Lesnar, same thing, even though as unsafe as that match was. CM Punk the year before, Shawn Hunter, you name it. Like, he was in a time frame, I think, towards the end of that streak where he was of a diminishing value, but those guys hid that.
Yeah.
Those guys' greatness helped hide
Yeah.
that, along with his greatness, too.
Yeah.
So I think maybe there was an uneasiness because he was unsure if that could happen with Sting, who's probably at that level, at that time, equal in diminishing value.
Yes.
In diminishing scale.
Yeah.
So two guys who are diminishing are going to collide, where they can't necessarily cover each other up.
They may be able to build it up with all the smoke and mirrors and the hocus pocus and all that other stuff, but when the bell rings, that's pretty much when things end.
Exactly, right. So it was probably wise on his part, and I get that.
As we get this trophy presentation here, Sting, Luger, you see Benoit Guerrero, Johnny B. Bad, Alex Wright. Randy Savage was in there for a hot minute, but I think they realized he's got a match coming up at some point, so he had to duck out of there. And I think up next is the triangle match, and then following that, we will have the main event. The winner of that triangle match to go up against Randy Savage. So the title match will close this pay-per-view. As we see Dusty Rhodes, Bobby Heenan, Tony Schiavone.
It's in many ways like a star-studded announce team.
Yes. I a lot of people, I'm not a big fan of the three-man booth, okay? But
by and large, I would agree.
And a lot of fans aren't. But there are good trios that have been together that have called matches over the years that I think don't get enough credit. Vince, JR, and Jerry Lawler.
They had some good ones, yeah.
They had some really good ones. And I think even and that was another thing, too. WWF, I think at this time, only did two. They only had Vince and Lawler, or maybe JR. They used to always do two-man booths, and then occasionally they would do a three-man booth. WCW always had the three-man booth. So you had Schiavone on play-by-play, and then you had two basically color analysts with Dusty and Bobby. I thought the chemistry between those three was really good.
I would agree.
And not only were they good at illustrating a story with what you were watching on screen, but they were able to take, and I don't know if they did this on purpose, but they were able to take moments that wasn't necessarily designed to be presented in a certain way on TV and poke fun at them. Or like Bobby Heenan would make a joke, and like you could tell like the chemistry was organic when like Bobby Heenan would make a joke and Dusty would kind of joke back with him, and it may not have anything to do with the match.
Yeah.
But like you felt as you were, at least for me as a fan, you felt as you were watching like they were having fun with what they were doing.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, so that's what that was the big appeal for me, is what I liked about that as well.
I would agree with that, absolutely. I think there was a little bit of an organic chemistry that they had that kind of bled through. Like, you knew these guys didn't just show up and put headsets on and start calling matches together.
Yeah.
No, there was like a built-in rapport from knowing each other for decades.
And also, too, even though Bobby was traditionally the heel of the commentators, he wasn't so much a heel that, like, he disagreed with a lot of what, like, Tony or Dusty would say. He would, but he was also, he wasn't the Bobby Heenan that we got in the WWF, where he, like, totally played it down the line as far as a heel commentator. Whereas on the other side, Vince and Jerry Lawler had an answer for everything Vince said.
Right.
You know, Bobby, he was a heel to an extent, but he didn't put it on like full.
Yeah, he didn't say things. He didn't do the outrageous things. Say the outrageous things he would say in WWF to Gorilla.
Yeah.
To get a rise out of Gorilla, which is, of course, like the gold standard of commentary teams for that reason, because of that chemistry.
On the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So like, in the same way that JR did it or the King did it to JR in the Attitude, just basically it was almost like a rib to the straight laced guy to get the heel to just fucking stick the needle in and twist it.
Like I said, Bobby would play heel every once in a while as a commentator in WCW programming, but it wasn't as over the top as it was when he was in the WWF.
Yeah,
and
plus,
then
that's the airtime and the real estate, too.
And I think also, too, what was great about, and people will say, like, oh, the quality of his work, wasn't the same in WCW. I think what was great about him as a performer was his character had established an on-screen relationship with Hogan, so much so that when Hogan turned bad and joined the NWO, Bobby Heenan...
Oh, classic line, I think.
Yeah.
What have I been saying all these years?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's like, I told you he was this evil. And then when the NWO had grown and become this larger-than-life, act on television, Bobby would, in a way, he would admonish the NWO, but then he would totally put down Hogan. He would keep with it.
He still hated Hogan.
He still hated Hogan. He'd be like, those NWO guys, they may be, he would kind of like,
but he
kind
still
of give
hated
him like
Hogan.
a little tip of the cap.
Well, I remember also like, once that storyline got rocking and rolling, like, and they were like taking over Nitro, there was like a scene they did at the commentary table where like, he was like so like, in that heelish cowardice like position of like, please, I'll join you. I'll do whatever you guys want.
Yes.
Like kind of that whole like, I'm with you. Like,
Yep.
And
that was right before Starrcade.
Yes, that was so well done. I was like,
Yes.
I'll do whatever you guys want.
Yeah.
Like, I'll join you. Like, I'll wear your shirt or whatever. Like, whatever you can to save his own hide. You know what I mean? And I thought that was like, like really put over the severity of like but also like at the same time he stayed true to that's what Bobby Heenan would do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To protect his own hide. Like,
Yep.
Paul Heyman did it to Kevin Owens, I believe, at the Royal Rumble. Like, at that post-match scuffle where he, like, turned around. Was it the Rumble or WrestleMania? Royal Rumble, I think. And, like, there was a, either post-match or right before Owens got beat down before the Sami Zayn turn. Like, he was about to, like, guzzle Owens, and Owens turned around. And Paul Heyman was like, oh, I'm with you now. I'll manage you. Just to back off Owens from...
Oh, it was Elimination Chamber.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, but he's
Owens
like, I'm
made
with
the
you.
save for Sammy, yep.
I'm with you now, which was like, people thought that was like an Easter egg. Like, oh, Paul Heyman's going to turn.
I thought that too.
It was just
I kind of thought that too.
Work.
Or I thought at the very least it was going to be acknowledged that like, by Roman, like, hey, what did you just say to him?
Yeah, right.
Kind of thing.
After the fact,
something after.
But that was like classic wrestling. No, I'm with you now. Like, shake my, we're good.
Yeah.
And then of course Owens is like, no, I don't trust this fucking snake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was Bobby Heenan.
Yes. Yeah, to a T. Absolutely. So the triangle match is underway. Sting, Luger, Flair. Winner will face Randy Savage immediately following. So this is Flair's first match of the night. But like you said, everyone had to get on the card
Twice.
At least wrestle twice.
Which is dumb, but whatever.
Which I would have been, honestly, it would have been more interesting had they turned it into a four-way with Savage. And so the appeal was, the appeal would be Flair as the heel only wrestling once.
Right, exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier.
And the other three, even with Savage as the champion, all like maybe Flair turning down a spot on the WCW team.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna wrestle, for you guys, and then have to wrestle for the title later and get my title shot.
Flair. I get the title shot. Or like if they had opened the show with this match, and then like the story that you can tell is like with a Sting and a Luger who are competing in those Japan matches, like I don't know, leave some sort of injury or some sort of ailment or some sort of obstacle of like, wow, like Luger took a beating. Like, how's he gonna do for WCW tonight? Or same thing with Sting. Or that's a scenario. There's just someone. It opens the box.
They do an injury angle, and is Sting going to be able to make it to the final match in the seventh? Yeah, against
Can Sting make it to go get the title back or do what? So there's all that stuff that you could do. But I feel like the fact that this is on now, and then there's the next match. It's like you don't leave any curiosity available. It was silly to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, this aspect really is the only drawback of this event.
This was them just trying to squeeze this into the concept.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Like we still got to sell pay-per-views and sell tickets.
But you know what though? It's no different than when they do tournament-themed pay-per-views, and in between the rounds, they got to throw like a non-tournament style match.
But does that usually include guys who are in the tournament?
No, it doesn't. That's fair. Okay, that's a fair point. You know, like, but that's what also makes some of those tournament style pay-per-views not as appealing. You know,
That
like
nothing's, you can't announce matches ahead of time. Yeah.
like either like to me, like for instance, like I go back to like the King of the Ring events over the years. Okay, where they used to do the 8-man tournament in one night, or they even would do like, I think they did like a 16-man one year.
I think the original King of the Ring show, which was like a live event, was, I believe, like a 16-man tournament.
Yeah.
In like fucking Ontario, Toronto.
Who won that? Don Morocco, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He won the first one.
But I feel like Bret Hart also won one of those too.
Bret Hart did win one in '91. I remember.
Yeah.
DiBiase won a couple. I think
Yeah.
Savage won before he was the king on TV.
Yeah.
As well.
So yeah, but those were like one-night tournaments where it was, like you said, 16
Yeah.
wrestlers.
But then when
Every
they
match was-
formatted on television and pay-per-view,
you had to give it an attraction. You had to sell the pay-per-view on just more than the tournament because you didn't have a card that you could announce other than the first round matches.
Yeah.
And that's not as all that appealing. So I get that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But again, like they didn't use the same wrestlers in the tournament matches as they did in the other matches. So that's like where they really screwed themselves here. I feel
like King of the Ring '93 was an 8-man tournament, and you know I get it. They want to create this story of this tournament, but some of the matches you have to come up with some finishes for time purposes. You know, like a double DQ, or you know, these two guys, you know, one guy got counted out, or someone gets a bye. You know what I mean? Like in a tournament kind of thing. Like, but at the same time, if you're going to do that, then in a sense, there's no point in having a full tournament. And then eventually, King of the Ring, they turned it into like the Final Four.
Yeah, which I don't like. I liked it when it was 8. 8's a good number, where it's like still like you're actively in the tournament.
But at the same time, though, here's the thing. Like you just said earlier, like you got to add some kind of an attraction to it in order for people to want to buy the pay-per-view, because all you're really doing is announcing the first round matches. But what about what's at stake? Because they're, you know, being at the time in the 90s when you had these King of the Ring events, there was really nothing at stake other than you became the king.
Sure.
You know? If you were to announce something ahead of time being at stake, do you think that there would be a little bit more of an appeal for people to order those events? Like, let's say the king win, you become king, and it's in similar Money in the Bank fashion. You can choose when you get your title shot. You know,
yeah, that would definitely add some sizzle to it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to put it over the top, but it's certainly going to like, incrementally add some sort of intrigue to it. Yeah, definitely. I would say so.
I think something like that would work in a streaming world better than the pay-per-view era, because in the pay-per-view era, you lived and died off of, you know, having big names draw money to buy the pay-per-views and to fill the arenas. Now in the streaming world, it's much different, because you're getting that money in a sense up front.
Yeah, like I said, it's baked in. You already got the subscription, so you're fine. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's certainly a happy medium, which I think they were able to accomplish during that era where the King of the Ring was a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Where they had the 8 or 4 competitors left, and then they also had like the headliner match, like the world title match, or whatever, you know, Stone Cold was doing, or whatever. You know what I mean? That, I think, was the happy medium, where that's why King of the Ring in many ways was considered a Big 5 pay-per-view, because that was there plus some good matches.
Yep. Yeah, I think now, because of the advent of women's wrestling becoming, you know, more prevalent in the mainstream scene, that doing a Queen of the Ring and a King of the Ring, you obviously can't do 8 tournament matches on each side. You would have to kind of do a Final Four for the men and a Final Four for the women on the same card.
Yeah.
And do, you know, there's 2, 3, so 6 that's 6 matches right there. Yeah. And then you throw in, you know, maybe 2 more matches as an attraction.
Yeah. I think what you could do, which would be neat, and I think it would be perfect in Saudi Arabia, is what if you had a 2-night event to hold these 2 tournaments?
Yeah.
And not one night is the women and one night's the men. You mix it up.
Yeah.
And the finals of both will take place
the second night
too, right?
Yeah.
That would be cool. And I think that would have some appeal. And I think in this era of like them trying to like send over these gimmicks and these themes to Saudi Arabia, that's a perfect one.
Yeah.
Or imagine it at a Crown Jewel where maybe it's a 2-night event.
Yeah.
And even that's a theme. Mm-hmm. That's a gimmick. You know what I mean? And that's going to be grandiose and matter a lot more. And you can spread out a tournament over the course of 2 shows.
Imagine some of these older wrestling pay-per-views that we've watched over the years if they were 2-night events.
That's a cool,
like we've talked about WrestleMania and how certain WrestleManias could probably fit into a 2-night format. Mm-hmm. For me, for instance, WrestleMania 7, I think is perfect because there's 15 matches on that card. You pretty much cut that in half.
Yeah.
And you have night 1 is headlined by Warrior and Savage with the retirement match, and night 2 is headlined by Hogan and Slaughter. Yeah. With the championship match.
And that's a concept I think I introduced a while back that I think we'll probably do in long form.
Yes.
WrestleMania season.
Yeah.
We each pick a WrestleMania and use the matches available to make a 2-night event.
Make a 2-night card. Yeah.
I think you look at for instance Survivor Series. I think would be good for that. Survivor Series War Games would have been good for that. If you had one night is female War Games, one night's male War Games. You know what I mean? Rather than bookending a pay-per-view, it was an excellent pay-per-view.
Yes.
Wrong. But imagine that too. Where you have all these wrestlers and all these different. If you wanted to have your cake and eat it too, you could have each night headlined by a War Games, and then you have Survivor Series matches in and around that.
Yeah.
That would be cool. You know what I mean? Especially when you're talking about brand warfare and the new brand extension or the draft that they just had, or even. There's not much in terms of all the shows that WCW did were more or less the same, but I don't know. I feel like Starrcade would be the one event you would probably do a 2-nighter for, because Halloween Havoc, Halloween isn't 2 nights.
Yeah.
So why would you make Halloween Havoc?
Yeah,
2
that's
nights?
true.
Now
Yeah.
that's a semantical thing.
Yeah.
That's not what are you going to do there?
Maybe a Great American Bash, because if you hold it on a holiday weekend and people take the holiday weekends
that's
as
true.
an extended
You could
break,
do that. Or Bash at the Beach.
Bash at the Beach, yeah.
Bash at the Beach weekend. That sounds
that's got a little panache to
topical and relatable. Go to a beach weekend. But outside of that, Starrcade would probably be the other one and would have the cachet for it. So, I think you could definitely do that with these. I'm trying to think of even on the WWE side, what else? SummerSlam, King of the Rings,
Royal Rumble.
Royal Rumble, I think would be even today. I think.
Yeah.
I think what I know we're talking WCW here, but I think what you could totally see eventually is that those big four
are just the 2-night events and everything else.
Not just WrestleMania will be 2 nights.
Yeah.
I think eventually the Royal Rumble will be 2 nights.
Yeah.
SummerSlam will be 2 nights. Survivor Series could be 2 nights eventually. Yeah. And you spread where those are the tentpoles, and then the other ones you get your Saudi Arabia show. Your Dubai, your Mexico City, and London type shows where maybe you're doing less pay-per-views theoretically, and you're just kind of reorienting where your big shit happens and just kind of doing the big four where they're both 2 nights.
All right, I want to touch on this. We are currently now at 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 47 seconds. This is a triangle match, okay? This is what they've labeled it as, a triangle match. But there's tags in the triangle match, and they have one guy out on the floor. I do not recall ever seeing a match like that.
I remember that being sort of a new thing they introduced around this time. Not here necessarily.
I know in tag team formats
Didn't
they've done
do that in ECW?
Well, they didn't have a guy tagged. All 3 guys were in the ring at the same time.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is that so you have a guy tagged out. So this essentially feels like a handicap match if you're watching it.
Well, it's not a handicap match.
No, I know, but because of the tag format.
Right, but I think they were still trying to find a way to wrestle triple threat matches, psychologically speaking. I don't think these guys were used to doing triple threat matches or multi-man matches.
Yeah.
They were just from a time.
ECW was the one that really kind of broke that.
Yeah, but if you even remember that initial triple threat match at the night the line was crossed with Sabu and Terry Funk and Shane Douglas. Terry Funk missed most of that match, and Sabu and Shane Douglas tore it up. And then I think Sabu got hurt. Terry Funk came
So
back.
they swapped them out based. They
on
booked it so that they swapped these guys out.
Yeah, it's a heralded match from what I understand. I've never seen it, but the psychology of it also made sense because it's Terry Funk and he's older, and Sabu could be reckless, and there was 2 instances where you could pull guys in and out.
Yeah,
but it still was more or less for 95% of that match 1-on-1.
Yeah,
but it didn't include a tag. This
gotcha.
one did. So yeah, I think this was just the early iterations of a triple threat match.
Yeah.
This is what they came up with to before they could smoothen out the process.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
But psychologically speaking, I think it's dumb because why would Luger ever want to tag in?
Yeah.
Well, is it elimination?
No, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 1 fall to a finish because Luger broke up Sting's pin in order to get into the match. I think he broke up the pin and then they tagged him in. Why would you want to tag in the other guy that's on the apron when you can have the opportunity to win?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the psychology in that doesn't make sense.
That's the dumb psychology about it. That doesn't shake with me. So and they did away with it because they made it make more sense by just having 3 people wrestle at the same time.
Yeah. And now it's, triple threat matches and 4-ways and all this other stuff are, things of the norm. But I remember growing up, when they would introduce those early on, and they wouldn't do them all the time. They would only throw them in sporadically. They felt like a big deal.
Yeah, and I feel like you could even do some sort of concept today where in some sort of attraction, depending on a storyline, where you do a triangle match where, I don't know, fucking a coin toss determines who's on the outside, and, there is the storyline element of how that plays to the performers, and it certainly can be done. It's just, but you have to acknowledge the obvious doing it. You know what I mean? You would have to acknowledge, great, Seth Rollins is in the corner, he's the champion, and he could lose his belt, and he could have nothing to do with it, which is part of the triple threat concept.
Yep.
But doing it in this format would have an interesting element to it, because he could theoretically not be in the match.
So Sting nails Luger with a chair, because there's no disqualifications. Or maybe there is, and they have the referee distracted. I don't know. But because we're watching this, we don't play the audio. We don't know.
I think he's being counted out, yeah. So I would imagine there is disqualifications.
See, that's great. So, all right.
But
so
then again, that wouldn't make sense.
So if he's counted out, then maybe this is an elimination match.
So then Luger would win the match, right? Would Luger be the winner because he's the legal
But maybe this is an elimination match. Because if Flair's counted out, how are you going to award Luger the win and Sting's on the apron?
Yeah. Here's actually an interesting spin you could put on a triple threat match. Say it's these 3 guys. You add the element of the beat the clock concept. So say it's Flair, Luger, and Sting. And let's say Flair beats Luger in 9 minutes and 12 seconds. Now Sting has to beat Flair in 9 minutes and 12 seconds.
Interesting.
Or Flair wins. And Flair doesn't have to win the match. Flair doesn't have to score a fall to win. He's set the clock. He set the pace.
So Flair's first victory essentially could win him the match if the other opponent doesn't beat the clock.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put a tag element. I'd have all 3 just going.
Yeah,
where the chase is. Who's going to set the pace? Who's going to score the fall?
Yeah.
And eliminate the first guy.
Beat the clock triple threat. I like that. And that's interesting.
And again, it would be really cool because now Sting's got to beat Ric Flair now that Luger's been eliminated in 9 minutes. If Sting doesn't beat him in 9 minutes, it doesn't matter if Flair doesn't score a fall, he wins the match.
Yeah.
That to me would be cool.
See, now so Flair's got Luger in the figure 4, right? He's holding on to the ropes. Referee's going for the count. Now Sting is basically trying to get the ref's attention that Flair's cheating. Why would you give a shit that Flair's cheating when Luger's your opponent as well?
Well, if it's 1 fall to a finish, what Flair's doing is to, I guess, get Luger to tap out by applying that pressure and therefore submitting. And that's if it's 1 fall to a finish.
There's way too many questions about the rules in this match. Granted, we're also doing a watch-along.
If it was an elimination, that would make sense.
Yeah.
That question would make sense because it's saying less for me to worry about is Sting. I'll just enter the match after Luger's been tossed. But if it's 1 fall, then he wants Flair to. But then again, wouldn't he be disqualified if he got caught? Wouldn't that end the match?
Yeah. So if he gets disqualified, then who's the winner?
Legally, it's Luger.
Legally, it's Luger because Sting's not legally in the match.
Right, and so again, all these.
But I guess that's something that you could implement later on down the line. That Sting never got pinned in the match.
Yeah,
and Luger may have won by default because of the disqualification. So Sting still deserves another opportunity at the title. That's something that you could implement.
Yeah, you could play with that too.
Yeah,
definitely. But again, to ask all those questions is to kind of go what are we watching right now?
Yeah.
So I think the simpler you make it, the better in that sense. If it can't be answered in a one or two sentences, then it's probably too confusing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
What's interesting about this match too, I just thought of it, is with the history of Starrcade, these three men in the ring, Sting, Luger, and Flair, were major parts of the majority of the Starrcades leading up to this. Like I said, Flair headlined like 6 of them. Uh-huh. Okay? And then Sting was a part of a fair amount of them as well. Mm-hmm. Flair main evented 88 against Luger. He main evented 89 against Sting and 90 against Sting. Mm-hmm. 89 was that like Iron Man tournament. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't come back till 93 where he would main event against Vader with the infamous career versus title stipulation. Luger headlined 88 against Flair. He wrestled Sting in 89 and in that part of that Iron Man tournament that Sting won. 90 was Luger wrestled Stan Hansen in a bull rope match in 1990 in the Kiel Auditorium. Okay. 91, Luger was the World Heavyweight Champion and lost the Battle Bowl match to Sting. They were the final 2 in the Battle Royal. 92, both Flair and Luger were gone in the WWF. Mm-hmm. And Sting wrestled. He lost that. Sting didn't win that Battle Bowl. He lost that. Great Muta won that Battle Bowl. Right. But Sting won the King of Cable against Vader that year. That bullshit tournament. I don't know what the King of Cable was anyways. And then 93, I think Sting was in a tag match against the Nasty Boys. Right. I forget who his part was. The Davey Boy?
That sounds about right.
Yeah?
For the time, it sounds right.
Then Flair in 94, he wasn't at Starrcade because of the retirement stipulation at Halloween Havoc. Luger was still in the WWF. Sting wrestled, I think, Earthquake on that show. Or was he did he wrestle Earthquake?
I think it was Earthquake.
Earthquake,
Avalanche.
Avalanche. I think he was the Avalanche before he was the Shark. And then this match here, 95. So, yeah, the history of Starrcade, Sting, Luger, and Flair, in this current match that we're watching, they have important roles on...
They kind of cover, like, all the main events.
Yeah. If you think about it. Yeah. And then following this is when really it shifts gears to... Well, there's not really much consistency. Hogan main events 2 Starrcades in a row.
And then what was 98? That was Nash and Goldberg.
98 was Nash and Goldberg. 99 was Brett and Goldberg.
2000 was...
Sid and Scott Steiner. Ugh. Which was probably the only decent main event match they could have put on at that time. There wasn't much left.
Did they have that tag team ladder match for the Cruiserweight tag title?
Yes,
that was a pretty air something around
No, it was 3 count, Young Dragons and Evan Courageous and Jamie Noble.
Yeah.
Which is the show stealer of that match. You could have stopped watching that pay-per-view and you'd have been fine.
Exactly.
I remember I ordered that pay-per-view.
What were you thinking?
I ordered a lot of WCW pay-per-views towards the end, thinking that they were going to make some big comeback.
Or something?
But this is a funny story.
Buy a hamburger and
I heard that wasn't true. True.
I'm sure it wasn't.
Yeah. But I ordered that pay-per-view, that Starrcade 2000, and the cable company at the time, when you used to order the pay-per-views, you got the replays as well.
Yep.
So you paid the $49.99 and you had wrestling on your TV for 6 hours. Yep. So
6 hours of WCW in late 2000.
So that Starrcade pay-per-view, we had an ice storm in Connecticut, and the ice storm took the power out. And we were sitting at home for a few hours with no power, candles lit, the whole lot. This is December, okay?
Yeah.
It's cold as fuck. We were living on Ardmore. And I had the TV and the cable box in my room, and I had already ordered Starrcade earlier in the day. So I managed the storm. I don't know what happened, but we got the power back on at like close to 10 o'clock. So I ended up watching the last hour and then recording the full pay-per-view at 11 o'clock. So I got to watch the ladder match.
Nice.
Later on. But yeah,
so, I can't recall that happening. I guess I was more interested in staring at a candle in the dark than watching Starrcade.
Well, no, we didn't have. I mean, we didn't have any access to television.
Yeah.
Where
Well, after staring at a candle in the dark for hours, I guess I was not interested.
Yeah, right.
I guess my interest was not starved enough to want to settle for watching Starrcade 2000.
I don't know. I was under the impression at that time that they were going to make some big comeback. I don't know. I really was.
Yeah, I was done with them after Bash at the Beach.
Oh, Hogan.
That's when I was like, this place sucks. Even Hulk Hogan says it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll do that one someday. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that would be an interesting show to go back and watch and make fun of for 2.5 hours on a podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be a lot of fun. I'm sure we can find plenty of things to talk about as we're watching that garbage.
Yeah.
But this match is a little long in the tooth here, I must say. And I still can't get over the idea that there's a guy on the outside in this triangle match.
And he's doing what he would do if he was a tag team partner, slapping the turnbuckle.
Yeah.
What are you getting excited for?
Babyface comeback. What are you doing?
Stomping on the apron, getting the crowd. Come on, let's go!
Yeah, do the Ricky Morton clap. Come on. What the fuck, man?
It's a dumb concept that they luckily got over.
And the other appeal of this match, not only the fact that, it's an opportunity to face Savage immediately following, but you now have friends in Sting and Lex Luger facing each other. And Luger was kind of a heel, but he was best friends with a babyface. And, looking back on it, as a young Dave Rosenbluth watching this, I hated it because I was conditioned to the good guys and the bad guys. They don't like each other.
Right.
But by today's standards, if they did something similar like this, a Sting, I'm sure they have. I can't think off the top of my head, but there's a little bit of intrigue in Sting being this good guy and Luger being this snake that everybody knows is a snake, but Sting has such a loyalty to him.
Yeah, no, he's not really like that, guys.
Yeah, there is some interest in it. Now, I hated it as a kid, especially when Sting was aligned with Hogan, and then he would tag with Luger. A week later after Luger had tried to take out Hogan.
Right.
I was so confused, but looking back on it in hindsight, ooh.
And he saw that and didn't do anything. So that's the deal. I don't understand this. Again, we're not sounding this off to get the explanation.
Yeah.
But it just.
And he goes back to Flair to tell him to stay in the corner.
You behave.
Yeah. Nick Patrick, your favorite referee, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Why don't you share with the audience what you don't like about Nick Patrick? Because this is something that you and I have discussed in text messages.
About?
Well, we talked. I think it was right around WrestleMania time. We were talking about referees going in the Hall of Fame because they put Tim White in, and I had mentioned Nick Patrick was one of those refs that could go in with Randy Pee Wee Anderson, Tommy Young, and you were like, "Fuck Nick Patrick."
Well, just on the Starrcade finish alone, I'm not sure what else I may have mentioned. I can't recall, but. Yeah, I don't know.
Starrcade 97.
Yeah, the Starrcade 97 finish alone is an abomination. What did I say? I don't even remember.
You were just like you don't like him as a referee.
Oh, I don't think he's a big deal. No, he's not a big deal. He's been around wrestling his whole life. I think his dad was a big deal, in the Territory days and
the Assassins, right?
Yeah,
Jody Hamilton,
and he was once a wrestler. I think in that group under a mask. So. I respect him, but he's not memorable.
Oh, I got you confused with Kobe.
Oh, okay.
Because Kobe hates Nick Patrick. He hates when Patrick when he does the count and he points to the hard camera.
Oh yeah,
like,
I've noticed that.
Like if it's a 2 count, he'll point to the hard camera.
Right, yeah, rather than like in WWE, they go to the timekeeper.
They go to the timekeeper who's out of camera sight.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. Which, you know,
I'm interested in knowing.
Or the way he even counts too, when he does like this flip with his hand.
Yeah.
Like he fucking hates that too. He talks about that too. Yeah.
Well, I think that is kind of silly.
I mean, whatever. Everyone's got their way of counting.
Or like, the old referees would just be like 1, 2, like very robotic.
Or they'll count, right? They'll go 1, and then they'll put the fucking hand underneath the shoulders to make sure they're still on the mat in order for him to do the second count.
Or it's like amateur wrestling, like
I'm
sure we're still, because that's how it works in amateur wrestling. But they don't count.
They do 1 count.
Once they go the shoulders are down, done. You're done. But it's not like a kick out. Like you could. That's not the way it works.
You're done.
Once he's decided your shoulders are down for the ample enough time for me to say it's over.
I think it's like 3 seconds, before he hits his hand on the mat to signal the.
Okay, that makes sense. That's where the 1, 2, 3 comes from in wrestling.
So I think here this might be the finish. I think Flair wins this by a count out.
Well, there's your advantage, if you will, your heelish advantage.
Yeah. Flair's tagged out, didn't really do a whole... I mean, he did a fair amount. I could be wrong. I'm not sure if this is the finish. No, Sting and Luger... Oh, no, that's right. Yeah. Luger... Yeah. All right, so they go back, they lean on the friendship thing. Flair wins this by a count out in order to advance to face Savage.
Having done not as much work as the other two.
Exactly.
Not as damaged.
And leaning on the two of them being friends, Luger... being the snake that everyone knows he is, Sting being the guy that still trusts him, even though he's a fucking snake, and now he just cost him the title.
But you almost have to do it that way. It almost seemed like the logical thing to do because the match is right after.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if Flair had gone in there, or Luger or Sting gone in there and had a banger and an arduous match, and then they won. It's like, all right, coming up next, here comes Savage.
Yeah.
Bring him out. And it's like, well, that seems a little unfair. You know what I mean? So this almost had to be the way to do it to make it even.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, these guys would have wrestled their 3rd match if they won.
Yes.
So again, all in the interest of fairness. That's what it sounded like.
And it looks like here that Luger's kind of apologetic for doing it to Sting, even though you see Jimmy Hart, see, this was weird too. Jimmy Hart had an on-screen alliance with Luger, okay, which I said I didn't really care for, but he also was kind of managing Flair at this time too, with the Dungeon of Doom. There was this association with the Horsemen in the Dungeon. Like, this was just weird.
Hey, Jimmy needed to collect some paychecks, man.
He wasn't doing enough. Fucking
look, he needed to open
carrying
up
Terry's
his
bags.
tiki bar in Clearwater Beach.
I wonder if he still got that.
I think so.
Or did he shut that down because he's running Hogan's Hangout now? He's probably the general manager of Hogan's Hangout.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't mind going there. I've seen pictures of it. It looks like a fun little spot on the beach.
What comes across my feed on Facebook is videos of him, Hogan, and his son Nick.
They hype it up for
They're
karaoke.
Like cutting classic wrestling 80s.
Karaoke for the karaoke nights on Mondays.
And like they're both Nick will be sitting there cutting promos, using his hands very like savage, like Macho Man.
I've seen those. Yeah, those Hogan's are kind of fun.
Doing the poses in between, and then like
lifts the bicep,
passes it off to Hogan, and Nick's kind of doing the same thing, and they turn their back to the camera. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I think I heard one once, and I thought I was going to hear something cool from Nick Hogan, but it wasn't.
They do it on Monday nights, and sometimes they've incorporated come watch Raw while we have this karaoke championship, and they do like cash prizes and stuff. Yeah. So I follow Hogan on social media, so on Facebook I'll get a lot of Facebook Live or like Instagram. His Instagram reels will sometimes be live of like them showing people singing, and of course they film him coming into the restaurant with his girlfriend, his girlfriend that's 40 years younger than him,
right? And
his son or whatever playing DJ. There was one night where, at least they had Flair stay in the ring. They didn't make him come back out and do another entrance again. Yeah. That was smart.
Yeah. All right, get the floor with the robe on, Rick. You gotta do another entrance.
It's like Bobby Heenan when he used to come out 40 times.
Yeah.
He had stock and floor shine. Hogan would come, they film him on Facebook coming in through the restaurant, and he fucking does the pose. And, there's a lot of fans there that are Hogan fans, and I'm not going to deny that. And then there's just regular people that just wanted to go in there and grab a fucking bite to eat and a burger and get the fuck out.
Again, I'm not a Hulk Hogan, disciple or anything like that. There is still a cultural relevance he's like somewhat of a national treasure in some respects.
Yeah.
Like, granted, there's some controversy that, he'll probably never really get over. But, like, he's still, like, he's still
a recognizable
figure.
figure.
Still a name and a person in our society that people know and you can say you saw.
Yep.
Like, I think our Aunt Nikki told us that she saw him on a beach in the Bahamas. And, like, she'll never forget that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She don't care for Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. But she knows who he is. It's like that.
But, like, hey, I saw, like, here would be an example. And not that Hulk Hogan and this guy have any, level of fame that's equal, but John Hamm from the Mad Men show, the actor.
Yeah, I know who he is.
I saw him in New York City walking down the street one day when I was in New York City, like 5 years ago.
Yep.
Like, and I'll always remember that because that's a famous person. And
Yeah.
that's what Hulk Hogan is.
Yeah.
So, play up the entrance. Let people see you come in.
was
That's part of going. That's the experience.
There was one of those Facebook Live videos where like they had Hogan sitting at like a high top table with his girlfriend, and then like Brian Knobbs was there, Nasty Boy Brian Knobbs,
another wrestler.
And so like someone was singing some song for karaoke. I forget what it was, and he's still as obnoxious as ever. Like, he's not changed one bit, other than the fact that he lost a lot of weight and he was very sick recently. He almost died from what I heard. So he's sitting back there. He's still sporting that fucking mohawk, that mullet mohawk, and he's got like a Nasty Boy shirt on that's like 5 sizes too big.
Yeah.
And you could just hear him in the background. He's like, yeah! Like, just like clapping it up, like in the middle of a song, like, yeah, go rock on! Like, he's like, either he's like loving life because he was almost knocking on death's door, or he's just still one of the Nasty Boys.
I would go just for that entertainment. I don't need to hear the singers. I just want to hear Nas.
Exactly. Remember when we went to WrestleMania in New Orleans, and we were it was the day of WrestleMania, and we were walking from our hotel, and we walked by the WWE hotel.
Yeah.
And we saw Knobs in the car. And remember when I said, hey, look, it's Uncle Knobs. And, like, he turned around and looked in the car. He was in the passenger seat.
I vaguely remember this.
And, like, I was like, hey, it's Uncle Knobs. And he, like, turned around and looked at me. Yeah. And you were like, he probably thinks that you're his nephew.
Yeah, so, I may have said that, yeah. Honestly, I don't remember that at all. That's awesome.
I just saw an interesting interview with Bruce Buffer, the brother of Michael Buffer, who was a ring announcer here. I didn't know this. But apparently, Bruce Buffer and Michael Buffer did not know that they were brothers.
Yes, I did read that somewhere.
Yeah, it was like, I forget whose podcast it was, but I saw it on Instagram, and they interviewed Bruce. And so, apparently, Michael Buffer's real last name, he was born Michael Hubert, if I'm not mistaken. He was, and I think he was adopted.
Okay.
And so, he had his name legally changed to Buffer because his father's last name was Buffer. Mm-hmm. And for years, Bruce did not know that Michael was his brother, and one day he had a conversation with his father, and his father finally spilled the beans that, like,
you're the Rennie Rumble guy. That's your brother.
I was, he goes, same last name. Is there any kind of relation? And I guess the old man.
All right, fine.
Had he.
Why don't you have a seat?
He got pretty much. He was like, They were driving one day in the car, and I guess he said something like, is there any kind of relation there? And he said, actually, and I guess, the old man served in the military. He met a woman. I think the woman either died or she wanted nothing to do. Bottom line is
he found out years later.
Yeah, he found out years later that was his brother.
That's cool. And I think Michael Buffer, we don't see him anymore. I'm pretty sure it's because he has some sort of throat ailment or a throat cancer.
Really? I didn't know that.
Or some sort of debilitating ailment centered around the throat that would naturally prevent him from.
This must be very recent because I don't recall. Because I thought he did a boxing match recently.
He may have. I feel like I heard he had some. He got stricken with something.
Speaking of throat ailments. The late Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
I did that on purpose.
I know. That's a great segue.
Michael Buffer. I'm going to Google it right now.
Paul Orndorff in the aisle. There at the time, Paul Orndorff was trying to recruit himself into the Four Horsemen. And the Horsemen kind of dodged him, and then finally they gave him an answer that he didn't like, and they pile drove him on the floor, and that was pretty much the end of Paul Orndorff's in-ring career.
Okay, so it's not. There was some truth to there. I was grabbing something from it. So at least according to Wikipedia, in 2008 he was treated for throat cancer.
Okay.
So my guess is since then he's probably obviously not doing much of this anymore.
Yeah, I remember seeing him on a boxing fight maybe it was a year ago. Might have been one of Tyson Fury's boxing matches.
I think the last time I saw him in.
Sorry about that. Software dropped out yet again. I think it's a sign that I might need to update it very soon. I've had the same software since we started recording this a number of years ago. So I paused it as it dropped out, and we are at 2 hours, 32 minutes, and 30 seconds with another about 12 minutes left to go on this broadcast. So I'm going to press play right now, and 3, 2, 1, play. As we continue here, we talked about Michael Buffer recently as we're watching this. Oh, you know what? Hate to cut you off here, but where is it? So I went to Ken's Cards recently, right? And they had some old WWF magazines. And while we are on the subject of Randy Savage and Ric Flair in this main event, I have the magazine that has the scandalous Miss Elizabeth Ric Flair pictures from the WrestleMania 8 hype.
The world's introduction to Photoshop.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. I saw it and I was like, I've been looking for that magazine for a while. And like on eBay, you find it and it's like 25. People they overcharge this shit. So it was like $8 at Ken's Cards. I was like, yeah, I got to get this shit.
Awesome.
So it's funny too because I got a great story behind that. So, I used to get the subscription to the magazines. Mm-hmm. And growing up, Dad was not the biggest wrestling fan. He might watch it here and there, but like for any kind of attention he paid to it, it was pretty much due to like the humor from Bobby Heenan.
Right.
And so I remember the magazine used to come in like a plastic sleeve, and you'd have to like open it, and there was the address. And I came home from school one day, and he goes, "Your WWF magazine came in, and you're never gonna guess. There's these pictures with Miss Elizabeth and Ric Flair." And Dad, so looking back on it now, like first thing I thought was like, give me the magazine, I got to see this, right? But now, 40 years old, and I look back and I think to myself, did Dad think there was like some like naked pictures of her or something? Is that why he opened it up to take a look at it?
Well, probably because like, I mean,
not to sound like a pervert.
Well, I was going to say probably not I would like to think not the pervy element to it more than it is like, all right, should my son be seeing these pictures?
Maybe, yeah, maybe he's probably taking a look.
Like,
but,
let me screen these first before.
But usually, like if I wasn't home and it came in the mail, like Dave, your wrestling magazine's here, like it came in the mail. But like he made the extra effort. He's like, Dave, your wrestling magazine came here, and there's these pictures with Elizabeth and Ric Flair. Like he just kind of like he like emphasized like, whoa, what, really, what? And then when I saw these pictures, I was like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Like,
the world's introduction to Photoshop.
Which, to me, like, a lot of people... Flair has said it, that, like, he doesn't think his WrestleMania 8 match with Savage was anything special.
I thought it was the best match on that show.
Agreed. And I thought, given the fact that they pivoted from Flair to Hogan to Flair to Savage, and in that short span of time, they ended up making an angle out of something that took place in the magazine.
Right.
In a short period of time was pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Like now you had, and here's the magic of that too, okay? Growing up as a fan, when you watch it, all these things transpire and you have to watch these angles unfold on TV. You had something that you purchased, that you bought, that was delivered to your home, that was an integral part of the story.
There's a phrase for that.
It made it feel like you had some sort of like attachment, like some physical attachment to the storyline itself. If you really think about it, because now you have people who subscribe to the magazine, like, oh my God, like I got this magazine, and it had like looking back on it now, it had like this very like National Enquirer tabloid kind of like vibe to it because of the nature of the pictures.
So there's an element to that I think plays here. The phrase is called environmental storytelling, and it's a method of storytelling that you see in a theme park, where when you walk in, it's you in all of your senses taking in everything around you. And in a theme park, a Disney, as an example, you can go one way, you can go the other. You can try this ride first, you can try this ride second.
You don't have to take one set direction.
It's not a linear thing.
Yeah.
Like television is. Episodic, week to week.
Yeah.
So when you got that thing, you viewed it, you looked at those photos at your own volition, at your own time. You were having cereal, you were watching TV, you were doing whatever, and how you absorbed it was entirely up to you.
Yeah.
So in that element, that's what environmental storytelling is being able to do that. Because and you, like you said, because it was in your own home, your magazine, it was yours, your name was on it. You have a role in that story.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean.
You feel some sort of an attachment to it
in a way that you control.
Yeah,
with every turn of the page.
Because when I would talk to friends about the story, on TV, like, oh yeah, Macho Man found out that there was these pictures of his wife with Ric Flair, and et cetera, and I'd be like, yeah, I got the magazine in the mail to prove it, and then I show them the magazine, and
some people didn't have the magazine.
Exactly.
So they had to get it secondhand or third hand or whatever.
Exactly.
So they're experiencing the story differently.
Yeah.
Than you are, because you kind of were like on the ground floor of the story, if you will, more so than someone else.
So here's a spot in the match here. Savage just used Jimmy Hart's megaphone to nail Flair, and then he, what it appeared to be, intentionally cut his forehead. I want to talk about, as we're watching the closing moments of this match here, and the spot. Flair is bleeding like a sieve, and according to our good buddy Mr. Dave Meltzer, he claims,
is that Brian Pillman, I think?
that is Brian Pillman with a Chris Benoit appearance in there, which is going to set up, I believe, the finish here to help Flair regain the title.
How come no disqualification takes place here? Like after, I guess he didn't see Pillman do anything.
Oh, there's Anderson.
Yeah.
First cameo of Arn Anderson. He didn't see Pillman do anything. He definitely didn't see Arn Anderson do anything. And your winner and new WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Nature Boy Ric Flair, with help from the other members of the Four Horsemen. But I wanted to just touch upon the subject of blading. The WWF pay-per-view a few weeks prior saw Bret Hart and Davey Boy.
Yep.
In their In Your House match. And
what was that In Your House called?
Seasons Beatings.
Yes. I do remember this match.
And Bret claims that was a accidental hard way cut open. And according to Meltzer, he thinks that WCW counters with this blade job with Flair because the WWF did theirs.
Probably not, but okay.
Yeah.
The guy who literally made a career staining his bleach blonde hair with blood decided that it was, I should probably bleed this week because Bret Hart of all people bled.
Yeah.
Okay, Meltzer, go fuck yourself. That's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, he says it's WCW's response to Bret Hart's blade job 2 weeks ago In Your House. WWF hasn't officially reversed its policy, and the official story is that Bret bleeding on that show was accidental, but Meltzer doesn't buy it. Flair's blading was definitely intentional, planned, and approved by WCW, believing that the WWF is now allowing blood. It's just another step in the war between both companies trying to outdo each other.
Walking piece of human scar tissue, Ric Flair. You're telling me that the thousands of times that he did that, this one was in reaction to someone else doing it? No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Dude.
Yeah.
That doesn't fly.
It's interesting, too, because in the Flair Savage WrestleMania match, he bled. And Vince...
In just about every match you ever watched him wrestle in, he bled.
That's true.
But this one, he decided that he had a new motivation for doing it.
That is true.
Mind you, it did happen in a very weird... Like, it happened at the end for, like, the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Not even.
You didn't really get a chance to absorb it.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh my God, he's bleeding. Like, there's more drama.
Yeah, they didn't. Like, It happens as the finish.
But that was Ric Flair. Ric Flair would literally just do it. He was like Moxley before Moxley.
Yeah. What's your take on... We'll close out this podcast here as we get to the tail end. We see Tony Schiavone. What's your take on blood in wrestling nowadays?
It's It's something that I'm glad can happen occasionally, but it doesn't need to happen really.
So do you think in the past there was overuse of blood in wrestling?
Well, I think it's like AEW. It's like happening all the time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Like
well, I'm talking about in the past, like in the glory years, like they
I mean, probably in hindsight, yes, but like I can't be one to judge if I didn't see it happen. You know what I mean? At least in the moment. So I think it's just a nice tool to have in the toolbox.
The worst use of blood, in your opinion?
Ooh, like as in like the most gratuitous.
Yeah,
or
the most like gruesome looking that you had seen.
Oh, like just the nastiest looking.
Yeah.
There's two that come to mind. One, Eddie Guerrero,
yes.
quit match with JBL. That chair shot too was like thunderous.
Yes,
that's one. Another one
Judgment
that
Day,
I was able to watch live in Hartford. John Cena fought Edge in a match at a house show in 2006.
Right. I remember that.
And that was a gusher.
Yes,
an absolute gusher.
Yep.
I've never seen that before. Like even to this day, that's still up there as one of the like wow, like that is definitely. And another one actually that was somewhat unsettling. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 34. That was uncomfortable. Watching.
Oh yeah. When he elbowed him and he got him on the hairline, yeah.
That was, and then just the tension in the room, the arena, the stadium at WrestleMania was like.
I think it was also the way too that they had kind of
the fans were backlashing against the match in general, and then Brock was just going in on it, and it just had a very eerie, uncomfortable, tense environment that was starting to cook up, and then that took place, and it was very uncomfortable. Yeah. I remember just being like, not gross, but like it was appropriate. It really played into the environment that was taking place, and that was the I know we're coming up on time here, but that was like part of the allure or the mystique of Brock. Like, oh, maybe he did that off script.
Yeah.
And he did not. I don't think so. But again, in that split second, the magic is happening where you maybe wonder. Yeah. And that's the genius of Brock Lesnar in that moment.
The JBL Eddie Guerrero one, I think, is probably the worst one for me because not only just how gruesome it looked, but what transpired after the story where he had to go to the hospital to get a blood transfusion because he almost fucking died.
Out, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's scary shit.
You know?
No one should have to do that.
Like, and Flair always has said, like, you know, when it comes to blade jobs, like, he drew a sword. But Guerrero, I don't know what he drew, but holy shit.
Fucking,
like,
the Declaration of Independence across his forehead.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. But we're at the end of this watch-along here of Starrcade 1995. Overall, what'd you think of the show?
That was a good show.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, as a standalone with some topical nature to it, I thought it was a very good show. I didn't think it was a classic.
Yeah.
By any stretch. But
underrated, I think.
Yes.
Is very much so. A lot of people, like, you know, I think as you get older, when you watch this stuff, you get a little bit more of a different slant. And I've noticed watching a lot of the older WCW stuff, I think WCW and their programming from like 90s, even in parts of 98, I think they get a bad rap because of a lot of other shitty things that they've produced, and I think this show gets
the
lost.
Losers of history. History is written by the winners. So.
Lost in the shuffle in many respects.
Yeah, and we're so polarizing. It's either the greatest thing you ever saw, or it's the drizzling shits.
Yeah,
and this is neither.
It's neither.
But it's very solidly good.
Yeah, it's a solid, good, fun show. You know what I mean?
And I would go back and
like
watch
you said, you could. Because of the concept being the best of seven and the international flair to it, you could show this event to a stranger, and you don't have to worry about explaining X, Y, and Z with all the other different stories because, like you said, it's standalone.
Yeah, you're not mid-season in a drama where you need to kind of catch them up.
Yeah.
Like, it's just what it is. It's what it is. And for that reason, it's a good show.
Well, that's going to do it here for the OG Forbidden Door, a.k.a. Starrcade 1995. Thank you for stopping by and chatting it up with me as we went back and watched this here on Kicking Out at 2. Our next episode is a special one. Dennis is going to join me, and we're going to watch the Undertaker Mankind King of the Ring Hell in a Cell match from June of 1998. We'll be approaching the 25th anniversary next week when that show drops. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Dennis and I are going to go back. Dennis is a big Mick Foley fan, big Mankind fan. So I'm sure he's going to have a lot to contribute as we go back and watch that match on the 25th anniversary of it, which that match pretty much really changed the game in terms of
Gratuitous violence.
Yeah, it did.
On a mainstream level.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it really upped the ante. Like it set the bar, cleared it, and
things
cleared
definitely
it
passed it.
Yeah, like
it definitely pioneered a style, or not a style, but it pioneered a new layer to WWE, or more tools that they could go to.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and was even often imitated by even WCW in terms of the violence factor in later years.
Yep.
But so it's gonna be a lot of fun covering that one. And I think it's about that time that we officially put this one down for the 3 count. We'll see you all next time.